Very good.
Okay. We are, if I can get everyone's attention, we are right to resume. So welcome back, everyone. And I'm going to go straight to Senator Bragg to continue his questioning from before dinner.
Oh, thanks, Chair. So, hello.
Hello.
So where were we? I was asking you, where's my legal friend gone? Hello?
A little reluctant to come forward.
You're not going to get out of that easy. Nice try. Okay, so effectively what we were doing is we were looking at FOI 4065 as tabled with the committee.
Nice.
And I was asking you about why you thought it was okay to use Section 22 exemptions from the FOI Act. And in your own hand, you say that Section 22 relates to names, email addresses and direct phone numbers of government employees. Now, the trouble with that is that the section, one of the sections in the modelling as redacted is number 4, point 4, factoring in the supply response. Now, Mr. Hertzberg, pardon?
At the start about how
I might just kind of finish. Chair, do you mind if I just ask my question?
Oh, sorry, Senator. I thought you had. My apologies.
No.
Sorry.
So the question is, do you think that there are any names, email addresses or direct phone numbers in the redacted section number 4 factoring in the supply response?
So, Senator, FOI processes work with a matter comes in. We have to identify a decision maker. The decision maker is usually in the relevant policy areas, so they understand the subject matter. We can't opine on what the decision maker was thinking. David, or Mr. Hertz, can tell you about what Section 22 provides for and how it's commonly applied. But it's really the opinion or just a view of the decision maker as to why they extracted. And when we send responses, we do include information on rights of review, so that there can be a review process if an applicant wants to challenge a decision of a decision maker, and it is then escalated through the organisation to another decision maker.
Well, before you add to that answer, Mr. Hertzberg, Ms. Brown, I don't know that it's a reasonable position for you to argue that you don't know what was in the mind of the decision maker, given the changes that seem to happen in Treasury on a regular basis. I mean, the Treasury Department, in which you are one of the accountable officers, is making judgments about the FOI system. So my question to Mr. Hertzberg is, do you think that there are any names, email addresses or direct phone numbers in Section 4 factoring in the supply response on the modelling about the 5% deposit scheme?
Well, Senator, we have had a stable team. The FOI team's quite stable. There are very experienced people in my team. We haven't had a great deal of turnover. The decision maker has made the decision that they've made. As I said, this decision's before the Information Commissioner on review. Yeah. I don't think it's appropriate for Senate estimates to be used as a forum to conduct that review. That's before the Information Commissioner. What I will say is, under the Act, we have the ability to provide a revised document set, and we're happy to look at it. If there's been some sort of error or some sort of application of Section 22 and we agree that it shouldn't have been applied, we can offer a revised document set to the Information Commissioner.
Well, it's always good to admit when you're wrong. What is Section 22?
No, surely you're not going to do that.
What?
Admit that you're wrong.
Pardon?
You're going to admit that you're wrong.
Oh, look, I'm sure that there are many times when I've been wrong.
Come on.
It's hard to believe, I know, but it's true. So what is Section 22 then? What sort of exemptions does it allow for?
So I've got the Act here, Senator. Section 22 is not an exemption. It just allows you to delete material if it's irrelevant. So say you ask for documents about modelling, and we've got a document that has a passage that covers that modelling, and another passage that's got nothing to do with that allows us to redact that irrelevant material.
So the FOI was any and all correspondence, briefings and other documents, including emails and messaging on mobile phones related to Treasury's modelling regarding the market and housing price impacts caused by the government's expansion of the home guarantee scheme. So section 4 in the modelling, the supply response, I would have thought, given there are two sides of the market, the supply side and the demand side, would have been germane to the actual modelling itself. So I don't know that I understand how the section 22 provision on irrelevance could have been applied to the section dealing with the supply side of the market.
Senator, I think the officials have offered two responses. Firstly, this is the subject of, the process with the Australian Information Commissioner. It's pretty difficult for officials to answer, given that process is underway. Secondly, the judgments that are made in relation to this have been made by an officer. It's hard for them to put themselves in the mind of that person. Thirdly, it's redacted, so I don't know what was in there. So it's actually pretty hard to form a view at the table about something that's not available to them. And now you can continue to ask the question in different ways, but I suspect that the answer is going to be the same.
So who's responsible for FOI at Treasury?
Well, we provide advice. We provide advice to decision makers in Law Division. When a request comes in, we assign it to the relevant area. If you ask a question about housing issues, a senior executive service official with authorisation under the FOI Act will be assigned as the decision maker, and the people in their team who have access to the documents will find the documents.
So in the case a citizen asks for the modelling underpinning a government program like the 5% deposit scheme, as has happened here, someone in the Treasury, in this case, the decision maker was, whoever we said it was before, Nicholas Dowie, is that right? Was he the decision maker on this one?
Yes, he was, Senator.
So Nicholas Dowie, he's a decision maker. He signs off on it.
That's right.
And does he do it with advice? But Nicholas Dowie is in the housing division, right?
That's right.
Okay. But does he do it with legal advice from the legal division?
Yes, we assist him. And if
you assist him?
Yes.
Okay, so in this case, did you provide advice about using the Section 22 exemption?
We can't determine that at this point. We'd have to go to
I'm
all
sorry,
the
but if the
records.
official knows the answer, he's replied to answer it.
Well, we wouldn't normally disclose the contents of legal advice. I'm happy to take on notice whether advice. Happy to take on notice whether advice was provided. I'm sure the team would have assisted Nicholas with this request.
So your team, the legal team, helps the policy owner, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, I imagine that the policy owner, in this case, I mean, I don't want to make this about people, but I mean, in this case, it's the official in the housing area. This person, I imagine, is not a legal person and is not an expert on the FOI Act. So advice about whether to apply an exemption would come from the legal department. Is that right?
Well, when a request comes in, we ask the decision maker to identify the documents, and that includes them identifying whether the documents contain irrelevant material. They will identify whether there's any sensitivities, and we will provide advice about whether an exemption can be applied under the Act.
So legal advises whether exemptions could be used.
We provide advice about the operation of the Act, which includes whether exemptions apply.
And then does that, I used to be an internal auditor, so I used to kind of look at the risk and controls. So then does that business line person, if you like, policy owner, does that person is that person given options about whether they could or could not apply exemptions or different types of exemptions?
In some cases, we might have a discussion about whether an exemption applies. We wouldn't offer options like that, but we might have that discussion, or we might be asked.
So you would usually give you'd give a preferred, or you'd give a recommended approach.
Yeah, which includes an observation that the FOI Act is pro-disclosure. We understand the objects of the Act. And we're legal advisors. We advise decision makers on the operation of the legislation.
So, finally, I think we're there. So the person that makes the decision about whether to use or not use an exemption is the business, the policy owner.
That's right, Senator.
Not you.
That's right.
You give advice, though.
That's right.
And they decide. So in the case of this 4065, the 5% deposit scheme modelling, did you advise using the Section 22 exemption?
I can take on notice whether any advice was provided.
But surely some advice was provided.
Well, I can take that on notice. I might also mention Mr Dowie should be appearing with Housing Group tomorrow morning.
Okay, I think we've gone as far as we can there. It's might be a bit of a black hole, I think. Anyway,
You're at 10 minutes.
Okay, you want me to go to the next thing? You want to rotate?
I'll rotate the call and then I
I've
can
got
come
quite a
back to
few
you.
more things.
So I'm going to go to Senator Pocock.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here. I've got some questions in relation to the research and development tax incentives. Is there someone in the room who's...
Yes,
Get
Senator,
that?
Treasurer's aware of that and the right group.
Great, thank you. So my colleagues have been asking questions about this, looking into this issue over several estimates rounds, February 2024 and again in February 2025 when we asked about the eligibility of mining and fracking companies to claim expenditure on the R&D incentive. The Department of Industry, Science and Resources most recently told us via Quan A126 that the ATO is responsible for reviewing the eligibility of the expenditure incurred on the registered R&D tax incentive activities. Can you tell me briefly what your understanding is of eligibility to receive the R&D tax incentive? What sort of activities is this scheme supposed to be used for?
So from a policy perspective, the R&D tax incentive is set out in legislation and that would provide who is eligible. Ms Berger-Thompson might be able to explain who the eligible parties are, but it is meant to be broad-based to encourage widespread adoption and widespread research and adoption. The government is making some amendments currently to exclude research in relation to certain activities of gambling.
I didn't hear the end of your sentence.
Sorry, the government is currently contemplating some amendments in relation to gambling and tobacco, but otherwise it is designed to be a very broad-based research and development incentive to encourage widespread research. But Ms Berger-Thompson might be able to, she's open the folder.
You're asking the language there so I understand correctly. This is a research and development incentive, however. When you say widespread, you don't mean things that are not research and development.
No, I don't. It's got to be research, but it's research. We don't try and define the type of research in the legislation, subject to the upcoming amendments in relation to gambling and tobacco. But you were asking about the definitions of eligibility. Ms Berger-Thompson may have that, or the ATO may also have an officer that could answer that, possibly.
So Laura Berger-Thompson.
Is that helpful?
Yes, so Senator, so the R&D tax incentive is under an administration model which is split between the two agencies. So, so just talking about the process element. So generally, there's an application which is made. It goes to the relevant part of DISA, and they determine whether the project is an eligible project. The tax officer's role is primarily then to work out whether the expenditure, which is actually spent, is spent on that project, rather than whether the project is, in a sense, good R&D of itself. So our audits are focused pretty much on that, and also So there's both ordinary compliance there, but as with all refundable offset schemes, we have to be very aware of the possibility of fraudulent claims. So we do spend a lot of time on fraudulent claims. We work very closely with DISA around this. Eligibility, so research and development, I don't have the legislative definition in front of me. I can obviously get that to you, but what is important here is it's not just that you're researching something that's interesting. It's got to be new knowledge, and it's got to have a significant risk that it's not successful. So it doesn't just have to be interesting. It doesn't. It's not enough that you call it, as a company, you call it research and development. It actually has to be about developing new knowledge, and that is. And of course, the aim of, from a policy perspective, without stepping too much on the toes of my Treasury colleagues, the idea behind it was that there are spillover effects from new knowledge being generated across the broader economy, from the fact that there's now new knowledge and adding to productivity.
So can I just go back to the process you've described, Mr Hirshhorn? Yep. DISA receives a proposal saying, we've got an idea here, it's a new widget, there's a 50% chance it'll work, it's genuinely a new innovation in
Yep.
relation to X or Y process. We think it's going to cost $10 million, and then you follow and make sure the $10 million go to the project.
Well, so that they may not say how much it's going to cost. They'll say, we're exploring this new thing, we think it's really interesting, it's completely novel, we want to start this project. And DISA will say, yes, we think that's eligible. I mean, there's an element of self-assessment in there, but basically DISA will look at it to see whether it is eligible. Then we will come along and say, well, you've registered for this eligible R&D project, you've claimed a certain amount of R&D. We'll obviously focus, we can't do every claim, but we'll look at the claims which seem a little bit stranger to us. And then we will check to see that that money was actually spent on the project that was described to DISA.
So you've used very explicit language, it must be new knowledge, and there must be a significant risk that it's not going to work, not successful.
That's correct, Senator. I will get to you on notice the actual definition, but that's the broad sense of it.
Thank you. The ATO's latest transparency report on the RDTI shows that fracking and mining companies are still claiming tens of millions of dollars in rebates. For example, Beetaloo Energy, $35 million, Tamboran, $20 million, Blue Energy, $14 million, Galilee, $10 million. Beetaloo Energy, which used to be Empire Energy, is that the right way around? Anyway, you know who I'm talking about, has also confirmed an ASX announcement last year that it expects to receive up to $18 million in R&D offsets in the second half of 2025. Tamboran likewise reports R&D offsets as a key source of cash flow. There's no mention of R&D activities in these investor statements. So we're seeing companies whose main business is drilling and fracking. It's not new knowledge. Access a scheme that's supposed to support innovation and not routine commercial activity. Would you share my concern about this?
So, Senator, obviously I can't comment on individual companies, and innovation can be on how you do something. So, for example, an improved fracking process may well be innovative. I would say there will be an application which describes the activities which goes to DISA. That goes through their review processes. We, of course, will come along and look at people's expenditure claims and make sure that they are spending it on the thing that they said they were.
But DISA is the one that decides exactly whether it meets the definition of innovation. Yeah. So can you confirm that ATO is responsible for administering and reviewing claims? I think you've just said that.
Yes, and Senator, of course, any consequence, whether that's a DISA reconsidering an eligibility or the ATO saying that expenditure was excessively claimed, the mechanism for bringing that home is through an amendment to the tax return. And so the ATO is, regardless of the cause of a rejected R&D claim, the ATO is the one that executes on that.
And what on average is the time frame around that? Are you retrospectively amending a tax return back 1 year? Is that the parameter? What are the parameters of retrospective change?
So, Senator, we normally try to be as real time as possible. I would say that most of our compliance activity would start after the tax return is lodged, so that's after the end of the year. We try to be, it takes a little while to do our risk engines, but ordinarily an audit would start within 2 years of the end of the tax year and then progress quickly. We'd try to finish things within, say, 4 years of... obviously for fraudulent refunds, or where we suspect that there's a fraudulent refund, the timeframes are much escalated, and we will try... our processes are geared to resolving the issue before we pay the refund.
Can you provide me on notice evidence about the numbers, the figures around fraudulent refunds? I'm not asking for them by company. Are they already published?
Senator, look, I'll take it on notice to present it to you, but we can give you detailed information on the compliance program around R&D.
Great. And how exactly do you know whether that money has been spent the way someone tells you they're spending it? What are the exact ways you look at that?
So, Senator, I fear that I will understate the craft of my auditors, who are very experienced. But if we choose an entity for further review, it will be a forensic examination of their financial accounts, often involve interviews of people. It will be site visits, looking at what they actually produced. When a matter is chosen for review, and there are phases of review. We'll do a first review, and then if our concerns are justified, then we will go to a deeper review. But there is quite a craft and skill in the audit teams who look at this.
Do you check all of them in that way with a forensic audit and site visits and interviews?
No.
Or do you randomly select? How do you do it?
So, Senator, it's a risk-based approach. So we have two major streams in our R&D compliance. So one is around where we think it's effectively the fraudulent, where we pick up things which we think are fraudulent claims. And there the intent is not to pay out the money, because we need to do the review before we pay out the money, because once it's gone, it's gone. Then another compliance stream, which is a more traditional audit stream. So which will be based on our risk engines. So selecting based on risk factors which have over time proven to identify companies which have misclaimed.
I'll come back. Thank you. Thanks for your answer, Sam.
Thank you. Just for those following along at home, the Productivity Commission have been released, and I'm now going to Senator Hume.
Thank you, Chair. I have some questions about some superannuation that's before the Parliament at the moment on supporting choice in super. My understanding is that the government is currently proposing to limit the way superannuation funds are advertised by employee onboarding platforms unless the employee's stapled fund can be displayed during that onboarding process. So what I'd like to know from the ATO, first of all, is that is the ATO confident that by the 1st of July 2026, which is the start date that these systems have to be in place, you will have your systems in place to allow software providers to retrieve that stapled fund information for new employees? Because at the moment they're saying that they can't get it.
Senator, and I've invited Deputy Commissioner Kelly to the table. My first comment would be that stapling has been an extraordinary success in the system.
Yes.
If I go back to 2019, I think it was something like 40% of Australians had more than one super fund account, and we're now at a stage where only 5% of Australians have more than two super fund accounts. So it's a great success. In terms of the stapling, this is one where we have to work together with software companies and payroll companies. We have what are called APIs in place already. So this is, rather than us offering an interface, we offer a way for third-party systems to connect with the data and do it in real time. But for more detail, I might pass over to Deputy Commissioner Kelly.
Ben Kelly, Deputy Commissioner, Superannuation and Employer Obligations. So what I would add to Mr Hirschhorn's answer is that, as you'd probably be aware, Senator, at the moment there is a process where the stapled fund is offered only where the employee does not make a choice of the fund when the choice is offered. So we already have the things in place, to your question, around making sure that that stapled fund is offered as and it's made available to the employer as an alternative in that case. Now, the matter I think that you refer to is a bill that's currently before the Parliament. My Treasury colleagues might be able to say a bit more about that, but I'm very confident that should that legislation pass, that our existing stapled fund arrangements will be able to accommodate.
So the platforms are telling us that it's sometimes difficult to access the information that shows what an employee's stapled fund is during the onboarding process. It's tends to be potentially even before they've had a TFN, provided a TFN. And because of that, this legislation would mean it's impossible to advertise alternative funds. You have to advertise alternative funds with the stapled fund. But if you can't have the stapled fund, then they just go back to the employer's default fund, which of course entirely undermines the point of stapling, which is that you should have a fund that follows you, and that should be your default fund, rather than getting another default fund, which is then a duplicate account and will actually blow all the good work that we've done out of the water.
Yep. So, Senator, I would say that we are aware of this, and we are aware of some industry participants who are already well placed to interact with our systems, some that are not. We are very aware of it and in discussion with them. We do have a challenge, though, which we are seeking to balance, which is around fraud. And that is that we can't have a system where somebody can say, I employ Senator Hume, I want to find out about what her super fund is, without us having evidence that they actually are your employer. And so part of the tension in this, which we are working through with industry, is how at that very early stage of the employment relationship, from a perhaps unengaged employee, how do we get confidence enough that the person who says is the employer, with the tension on the other side, which is we want to feed the employee's fund to a real employer in close to real time. I would say I think we are in a good position, not a perfect position, and we are in discussions with the industry as to how we can get to the right spot, balancing the need for real-time information, but with the fraud protection on the other side.
Would it help if you had a slightly extended start date? Does it need to be the 1st of July 2026? If it was the 1st of July 2027 for exactly the same legislation and exactly the same outcome, but time for everybody to get their systems together, would that be helpful?
Senator, that's fundamentally a policy question. If we are told that we need to have it in place by 1 July 26, it will be in place by 1 July 26.
So you can guarantee that these platforms will be able to access default fund data, sorry, not default fund data, stapled fund data by the 1st of July 2026?
So, Senator, I would say at the moment they are able to in real time if they get sufficient information from their employees. So there will be something in place on 1 July 26. It may not be perfect. We are working to make it as good as it can be on 1 July 26, recognising that some of the solutions which have been put forward to us, we are unable to adopt because of the fraud risk that it would open up.
Okay. I obviously will be watching this one with bated breath. I am very concerned that the good work of the Your Future, Your Super reforms are being slowly chipped away. Stapling was one of those reforms, and it's a very important one. I want to make sure that we make sure that the superannuation system works efficiently.
Senator, if it gives any comfort, I can assure you that we are of the same view, that we view it as a great success that we have so few people now with so many funds.
Yeah.
And those who are left with 2 funds, probably most are choosing that because there can be good reasons why
That's
you
right.
have 2 funds.
Thank you. I have just one follow-up question from the last round of estimates. There was the APSC Commissioner informed us that he was aware of incidents where public servants were providing advice to government using sticky notes to avoid record-keeping obligations, and obviously that would breach the Archives Act of 1983. I've been asking this question to a number of public servants that are appearing before me. We put a similar question to your notice, to the department, I should say, notice, not to the ATO, and I just want to follow up on this because it's quite an important issue. So perhaps Ms Brown, you can ask me, has the Treasurer or anyone in your office, in his office, ever requested that you or, to your knowledge, any of your staff not provide advice by email or through the Parliamentary Document Management System?
I'm familiar with the question on notice.
Yes.
We have an information management policy that staff are trained in and expected to comply with.
Yes. Okay. So the answer then is no. The Treasurer or anyone in his office has not, to your knowledge, provided advice, not asked you or your staff to provide advice, not to provide advice via email or through the Parliamentary Document Management System.
So advice can be provided in various formats, but where an advice is provided in writing, it is submitted to the PDMS system.
Sorry, I feel like this is a kind of simple question, and yes or no is pretty sort of sufficient. I realise the question on notice that I gave you, you have come back and said that that the preparation of the request, the response to this question would cause an unreasonable diversion of Treasury resources. That's fine, whatever, that maybe we can just get it done here. But I do want a straight answer. Has the Treasurer or anyone in his office ever requested that you, or to your knowledge, any of your staff, not provide advice by email or through the Parliamentary Document Management System?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
No. Have you ever asked any of your staff to avoid using email or the Parliamentary Document Management System when providing policy advice to ministers or their officers?
So we communicate with the office in various ways, but when it's advice in writing, it goes through PDMS.
Right. So you have not ever asked any of your staff to avoid using emails or PDMS when providing policy advice to ministers or their officers? Is that what you've just said?
We will provide policy advice verbally, rushing to a cabinet meeting and ERC. So I can't say.
Yes.
So,
but you've never asked your staff to avoid using email or PDMS when providing policy?
I have never asked my staff to breach the Treasury's information management policy.
No, sorry. Again, this is a really simple question, Ms Brown. Have you ever asked any of your staff to avoid using email or the Parliamentary Document Management System when providing policy advice to ministers or their officers?
No.
Thank you.
I can say no.
Is it your expectation that all key ministerial advice since your appointment as Deputy Secretary, as Deputy Secretary, yes, is recorded in the PDMS or another approved records management system in accordance with the Archives Act?
It is my expectation that it is.
Thank you. So that is your clear expectation of your staff, that advice on key matters shouldn't be printed and handed to the Treasurer's office. All of it has to have an electronic record and go through formal channels. So, not signal chats, not secret drops, nothing like that.
As I said, advice can be provided in different ways. Just by nature, if the Minister gives me a call and asks for advice,
yep,
I will tell him verbally.
Of course.
So
of course.
That's why I can't be emphatic with a yes and a no to these questions.
You're at 10 minutes, Senator.
Sorry, I will just follow up with one then concrete example. If advice had been provided to the Treasurer on the capital gains tax discount, would there be a corresponding record in PDMS?
Again, there's not necessarily. PDMS records certain advices. You can record advice in other formats, in other management systems. It's recording them in accordance with, like referring to the information management, the document.
So where else would it be recorded?
So we use SharePoint. We use a few information systems. which are, for the verbal call, you don't necessarily put it in PDMS.
So where would you record a verbal call?
So you make a record in a way that's in accordance with an approved business system, and there's a number of approved business systems.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Are you aware of any such records having been created or updated recently?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Are you aware of any such records having been created or updated recently?
I'm not sure what you mean by such records.
I just gave you a concrete example of advice being provided to the Treasurer on a capital gains tax discount. You've said that there are a number of places that could have been recorded, not just PDMS. If you are aware of places where that information could have been recorded, are you aware of any such records having been created or updated recently on either PDMS or something else?
I think we had a discussion at the start of the day. The Secretary had a discussion, and I had a discussion at the start of my session, that we're not going into specifics of the type of tax advice that we provided.
I'm not after specifics of the advice.
I'm sure it was an accident. I'm sure it was an accident, Senator Hume, but you proposed a particular proposition as a way of describing a general approach, and now you've moved to a specific approach.
Well, I was asked for an example because Ms Brown wasn't sure what I was talking about.
Quite clear that she's not in a position to assist you with that. But the Treasurer, I as a Minister get advice in a range of ways. The Deputy Secretary has been at pains to answer your questions with that qualification because that's just the way that advice works. If we're clear about what advice is, it's conversations with officials about particular things are included. She's been careful to set that out. I'm not sure that she can assist you any further.
Okay, you can understand why we would have all fallen off our chair when the APSC Commissioner confirmed that he was aware of instances where public servants had provided advice on sticky notes so that there didn't have to be a formal record.
I'm not aware of anyone ever providing advice on a sticky note.
Or any other way that couldn't be formally recorded.
That's right.
Thank you, Chair.
Hello.
Senator Bragg. And
So I've just got a few things to get through. So just in terms of some of these questions will be quick ones. Board appointments for Housing Australia and other Treasury portfolio agencies, do you deal with those things?
The appointments team sits in the corporate part of the department, and they appeared earlier this morning.
Hilarious, great.
I think you did have a conversation with Deputy Secretary DeMarco where she indicated that appointments team manages the process, but the policy area kind of manages the identification of the capabilities that you're looking for, will help with determining interviews and providing ultimate advice.
Okay, so I can't ask you about that. Do you do briefing? You don't do briefings either for appointments? That's all done by the corporate team?
No, the briefing comes from the policy area.
Which is not you?
Well, it depends on the portfolio body. So I would do briefings on appointments to the ATO, for example, because the ATO sits within...
But not housing?
But not housing.
All right, let's tick that one off. What about like governance exercises, commissioning of independent reports and the like?
Then again, there's a governance team that sits in corporate, so it's part of the corporate group.
Okay, so
they may at times get advice from the legal
Deloitte report,
division.
for example, into Housing Australia, does that touch your department?
No, that's questions we better directed towards Housing Australia, to Housing Division.
What about orders for production of documents?
The orders production document, again, similar to the FOI process.
Who deals with that?
The relevant policy area, I suppose, has ultimate responsibility for the orders to produce documents. They would collect the documents, review them, and provide advice to government. But as part of that, they might consult with the Law Division around whether there are public interest immunity claims that may be appropriate.
Okay, so the legal, I mean, they are legal orders. So you might provide advice on, as you say, PII claims.
Yes.
What about redactions? So let's go back to our hypothetical non-hypothetical perhaps, about the FOIs. So in the case of redactions made to FOIs, the policy owner consults with legal, they get advice. The decision making, as
It's
in accordance with the
responsible
Act,
for-
makes a judgment about whether something is redacted, covered up. But in the case of an OPD, is it the same, similar process?
Well, OPDs are to the ministers, so the minister is the decision maker, but they will seek our support in finding documents and seek our advice and support on any relevant claims that may be appropriate.
Okay, so, I mean, so in the case of,
I've just called, sorry, Mr.
yeah, welcome back. He likes these questions. So in the case of the, an OPD which is seeking a report, the government has commissioned, like the Housing Australia review, the intersection review, which we've discussed at length, prior estimates. So in that case, like the front cover, like one of the names of the report's been redacted. I mean, so it's a 4-word report, Housing Australia something review. That's obviously a top secret, state secret. So who would decide, in the case of this OPD, to redact one of the titles of the report?
Well, Senator, I mean, a redaction is simply, for an OPD, a redaction is simply a reaction to a public interest immunity claim. So if material would support a public interest immunity claim, that material can be redacted. As the guidance indicates, PII claims are for ministers, and as Ms Brown explained, we provide advice to ministers about whether claims might be available.
So legal provides advice. So in this case, this is a letter from, I mean, this is actually from Minister Ayres representing the Housing Minister. The Housing Minister has written to Minister Ayres saying that here's the OPD, here's the document, but we've redacted stuff, right? We've redacted stuff. I'm not sure they have, I mean, they don't have to, do they have to file a PII claim to redact, or can they just, I mean, what are the rules that apply here to OPDs and redactions?
They're really orders of the Senate, and so the Senate is more familiar with the rules than...
Okay, so I guess the question is, who decides to redact stuff?
Senator, every OPD will be responded to with a letter from the relevant portfolio minister, and that letter's attached. If the minister sits in the House of Representatives, that letter will be attached to a letter from the senator representing the minister, who tables those letters in the Senate, and those letters will explain, if there's a public interest immunity claim, the basis for the claim.
Okay, I'm just going to table this document because I want to ask you whether you had any involvement with it, or whether Treasury Legal had any involvement with it. So do you want to wait till you see the document?
I'm aware of the document.
Oh, you know which one it is? Okay, fine. Well, I don't want to be unfair. So the document is a report done into Housing Australia. Certain redactions are done. Did the Treasury Department advise to make those redactions? Treasury Legal, to be clear?
Well, we provide advice on orders for production. We provide advice on orders for production.
And you did this one?
We provided advice in relation to this.
So I completely understand, in this case, given the contents, why there are redactions. I understand why there are significant redactions. I don't understand why the title of the document has a redaction. Could you please explain why?
Senator, I think part of the problem here is a problem of your own making and the approach that you and some of your colleagues have taken to orders for the production of documents, questions on notice, and other kind of applications like this. I mean, the Senate has decided to do an average of 4.6 of these every sitting day. Like, there is an industrial volume of these kind of applications. That's 4 times what happened over the last year of the coalition government. On one day, the Senate agreed to 14 OPDs in a single day. One of them required the return of over 130,000 pages of documents. Some of them clearly are generated with artificial intelligence. We ask questions like, which floor is the Secretary's office on compared to that of the Prime Minister when the Prime Minister is working in that city? Like, what kind of fevered mind generates that kind of thing when the, you know, and you're now asking questions about industrial scale questions on notice as the Liberal Party's falling down around your ears in the corridors
Chair,
outside.
I think this political speech, while very interesting...
We have just discovered,
Chair, I think
what it is that the blokes who are backing Mr Taylor's attempt to knock off the first Liberal leader, the first woman leader of the Liberal Party, think is a decent interval between the departure of the Israeli president and this sordid effort. It's 3 hours.
Thank
3
you.
hours.
Okay.
Chair, I don't think this is relevant.
Honestly, it's utterly, hopelessly partisan, utterly, hopelessly industrial scale questions on notice. You can continue to persist in asking these questions, but you ought to take some responsibility for your conduct and conduct of some of the other senators who are beleaguering these people with requests for 130,000 pages.
We've got a lot of material to get through. This is not helping.
Utterly unreasonable.
I think we've got your point there, Senator Ayres.
Thanks for that political speech. So, I get that the government doesn't like to answer questions. I understand that. This is not anything to do with industrial scale process.
But it's industrial scale.
This is about the name of a document being redacted. Why is the name of the document?
Hang on, sorry, one at a time.
My question...
I think the Minister's made his point, and then now he's interrupting a question after only a couple of words. So maybe just turn the temperature down and get back to questions.
It's a very simple question.
Thank you for that advice, Senator Canavan, turning the temperature down. I'll remember that later.
So the question is, the document's title has been redacted. I understand and I can appreciate the sensitivity as to why certain things inside the document have been redacted. I don't understand why the title has been redacted, so I'm asking you, why would the Treasury advise to remove the title of the document?
Senator, public interest immunity claims are for ministers. That's the advice we provide. We provide the office advice, and that's the key thing that we tell ministers, that the long-standing Senate convention in the Westminster system reflects that ministers can make public interest immunity claims. That claim wasn't made by me, wasn't made by any official in the department, but we provide advice about how we understand the doctrine of public interest immunity operates to ministers.
So the redaction was made by Minister O'Neill's office?
Public interest immunity claims are made by ministers, Senator.
We'll ask the Minister then.
That's the way the system works.
So why did the government cover up the title of the document?
One of your colleagues, backbench colleague, who was sitting right next to you, has asked 35,000 of these questions. Like, you ought to grow up, the Liberal Party ought to grow up and start acting like an opposition that's actually interested in asking questions.
Why did you cover up the document?
Rather than generating this industrial scale load of utter nonsense.
What happened to your commitment to transparency?
I think we've...
I don't know what the basis for that was.
You don't know? I'll take thank you.
I'll take it on notice.
Okay.
But you can't expect an answer if your colleagues are asking thousands and thousands of questions on notice. Like, that is ridiculous. It's juvenile. It's not grown up.
Okay, thank you. Can I move on to RG97? Who can answer questions about that?
So that sits in Revenue Group, Senator, and it sits in Retirement and Income Separation Division.
We're on Revenue Group.
Yes, and so Mr McKenna is coming up.
Okay, thank you, Mr Herzog. Sorry about all that.
You're at 12 minutes. If you could
I'll go as fast
as you can, that would be much appreciated.
All right. Who have we got here?
Mr. You can introduce yourself.
Okay. You got your piece of paper? Good. Okay, thanks for being here. The government had I think they called it an economic reform summit.
Roundtable.
Do you know about that?
Yep.
You remember that? Yeah.
Yep. Middle of last year.
I think it was in the cabinet room. And the Treasurer announced that he wanted ASIC to do a review into RG97, which is the regulatory guide which deals with the cost disclosures and presentation of investment returns. You know about that?
Yes.
So, yep.
Yeah, you know about that. Okay, fine. So the reason he did it was because obviously the industry told him that it was a problem, right?
So that was a matter that was, I guess it was the focus of submissions in the lead up to the roundtable, including the investor roundtable, was discussed in the room of the investor roundtable, and ASIC took out of that a commitment to look at it.
So CBUS and all his other kind of friends told him it was a big problem. So he got ASIC to do the inquiry.
That's an unnecessary pejorative.
Oh, from you. Thank you.
That's not the kind of thing that I do, Senator Bragg.
This is the routine now.
There's the officials described the process that led to ASIC making
thank you,
that decision
Minister.
to do
Okay, so ASIC's doing the inquiry, right?
Correct.
And have they got a working group that's looking at it?
They had a working group late last year.
Who was in the working group?
Your Treasury was on the working group.
Were you on it?
I was on it. Yep.
Was it good?
It was excellent.
I'm sure.
It was right. But there were a range of super funds. You're probably better off talking to ASIC to get the...
Ask them about the members?
The members, yep.
Okay, so, I mean, effectively what's been asked for here is the stamp duty, the lumpiness of the stamp duty cost not be presented to investors in the way that it is now, right?
Senator, ASIC has completed its review. They put out a press release on the 28th of November where they outline what they're proposing. Some of your questions may be answered in there. We also have ASIC appearing later tonight.
Sure, but I mean, this is the Treasury portfolio, so I'm asking you what your advice is.
So, I mean, this is a matter for ASIC. It is their regulatory instrument and it is their process that they went through. As I mentioned, we were a part of that process. But,
well, what did you say in your engagement in the working group? I mean, what did you do?
Well, predominantly I listened to the views around the table of the stakeholders that were invited.
What was Treasury's position?
Well, we were there to... So there are potentially policy issues that might arise, so we were there to address any of those that might come up. And obviously we were interested because to the extent that it might have some positive impact on dereg or productivity, that's something that's of general interest to us as well.
But effectively the position is that if you change it, you risk investors not seeing the full fee picture and balancing that against the issue that the investors are making, which is that they think that they invest in a certain way, they would be disadvantaged on a comparative basis.
I think you've wandered over the line of asking an official to express an opinion about policy matter. He did say that it was good. I thought maybe that was even that was a stretch.
Excellent.
He said it was excellent. That's true. Was very positive about it, but I think it's difficult to ask an official to express a policy view about a discussion that they were
so I guess the question is then,
thing about.
Fine. I guess the question is then, I think I'm finished with this, is basically, so the Treasurer identified it as an issue. Clearly there was some engagement with the Treasurer and the ASIC Commission asking this to happen. It's happened, it's been concluded. The RG97 guide hasn't been changed, is that right?
It's under consultation at the moment. ASIC has a consultation process
it might
at the moment
change?
with a proposal to average over 7 years.
Average it over, which smooths it out.
Smooths it out,
right?
Still discloses it.
Still discloses it, so it probably deals with that issue. And that's the end of your involvement as to Treasury. The Treasury doesn't ask for a report back. You don't have to do anything else. ASIC does it all at arm's length.
It's ASIC's regulatory guide, so it's their responsibility.
That's it? You haven't been asked to give any more updates to the Treasurer or his office?
No.
Well, again, that...
No? Have you been asked to give an update on progress?
We'll probably
Not recently, no.
Probably give an update. I mean, they're currently consulting on changes to the consultation guide, I think it is. That closes later this month, the 20th. I'm sure that when that's settled and they find a position, it would be relevant for us to let the Treasurer know the final outcome.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Senator Pocock.
Thank you. I'll just return to my earlier line of questioning. Just want to check the definition of what's eligible for a research and development tax incentive. I want to make sure I've understood it properly. New knowledge, significant risk that won't work. So it would not include then applying existing technology to a new site. Would that be a fair statement, Mr Hirshhorn?
Yes. So, Senator, at the risk of giving tax advice from the table, which I of course cannot do as not being a registered tax agent, I think that is a fair proposition.
Thank you.
And Senator, for reference, the key provision is section 355(25) and then supplemented a little bit by 355-30.
Thank you. We'll make sure we have a look at that. When things go off, just on your auditors and your very experienced investigators, do their teams include engineers and scientists?
So, Senator, they do not include engineers and scientists, but those teams will have access to, will bring in experts when that's required.
How big is the team that does these reviews? How many people?
So, Senator, I will take that on notice.
Yep.
It is a significant function. To give you, look, I'll just
take it on notice. And if you wouldn't mind indicating the kind of professional expertise, are they all auditors, or what sort of professional background do they have? How many reviews would you do on average in a year?
So, Senator, last year, so there's about 14,000 claims each year, and last year of that 14,000, we did 400 compliance cases.
400 compliance cases, which you consider reviews, and they are triggered by a risk assessment?
A risk assessment, yes.
Do you have a threshold on the quantum? Like Beetaloo with, I think I said the figure before, 35 million. Do you have a quantum where you, if an applicant or someone who's using these RDTIs is very large, do you automatically look at them?
So I would say that size of claim is certainly a factor that we take into account. As a general rule, we do not set hard limits because that can be reverse engineered and people cluster just under those limits. But I can assure you that size of claim is a factor in who we choose for audit.
And can you confirm whether you have done any reviews on Beetaloo, Tamboran, Blue Energy or Galilee? Given that between them they have $79 million worth of tax incentive claims in the last financial year?
So, Senator, I don't think there's any information in the public domain about those companies, so I cannot confirm.
You can't give any... Do you do any publication of material about your reviews? Obviously very useful educative exercise to tax-paying public.
So, Senator, we do not give information on individual cases, except to the extent that they're in either the tribunal or the court.
Right.
In which case we'll always do that will be in the public domain. We'll do a decision impact statement. We do give aggregate information.
Aggregate information. So if you would, I think I might have already asked for that.
We'll get you the information.
Thank you. How many of these proceed to court in a single year on average?
Senator, I'd have to take that on notice, but very few, as a general proposition in tax administration, very few cases end up going to court.
Is there any fine or penalty for someone who has misled about their and been fraudulent in their claim?
Yes, Senator. So, and under the tax system, there's graded penalties. So if you've taken, if you've got a reasonably arguable position, the penalty might actually be, for being wrong, might be 0, but up to fraudulent, it can be a multiple of the tax.
Could you give us a table of exactly what can go wrong, the levels of graded misdemeanour and the numbers by those.
Yes, Senator.
Say in the last financial year, that would be helpful, thank you. Are the companies like those I've mentioned required to proactively demonstrate that their expenditure meets the eligibility for this program, or is this checked reactively only?
So Senator, first, the applicant has to register with DISA, which will give a lot of information about the project. DISA might choose to accept that on face value, or DISA might choose to explore more deeply. But it's primarily on a self-assessment basis because that's our tax system. Then in the taxpayer's tax return, if they are claiming, they have to include a fair amount of detail about their claimed expenditure in their tax return filing, which then gives us good data for the start of our risk analysis.
And do you believe the penalty, the frequency of being caught doing the wrong thing, and then the nature of the penalties that apply act as a true disincentive, or do the companies going for the entities seeking this tax reduction fly close to the wind and take risks to push as hard as they can? I'm just asking you for a subjective assessment, really, but we will look at clearly how many people get caught, and the consequences are important indicators, but are companies really pushing the boundary because the penalties are pathetic or weak and they risk them?
Senator, we take this program seriously, and within the allocation of resources, this is a serious sub-program. I would say that the group that we seek most to influence are the advisors and firms which specialise in R&D claims, and that our greatest effect is on deterrence at the firm level or the practitioner level rather than at the entity level.
And what educative programs do you undertake, if any,
so
to
Senator,
get out there and tell those advisors what's right and wrong?
Yes, Senator, I'll take the detail on notice, but we do give guidance material, and this is an area where we also publish things which we call taxpayer alerts, which when we find a practice which is concerning, we send out a taxpayer alert saying this is, we're on to this. And that is a way of trying to, like when we see a new practice emerge, how do we stop it multiplying across the system? And of course, if somebody then claims on a similar basis after we have issued a taxpayer alert, we would say you have not made that accidentally, you have deliberately chosen a path which leads to greater penalty consequences.
And how much confidence does the ATO have, or the Minister perhaps, that you are genuinely offering tax incentives to true innovation and new science and activity as opposed to just commercial business as usual? Minister, maybe you could give me an assessment about that.
It's a system that has supported a level of private sector investment in research and development in Australia. I'm the industry minister representing the Treasurer at this table. Of course, we're always looking at the structure of that system because it's important for Australia's research and development system and the private contribution to that.
Okay. I might switch, if I can, while the chair is distracted, to another topic, and that's the outsourcing within the ATO, if I could. And I've got one more set of questions, very small after this. But I wanted to go to the use of external labour in the ATO, which in 25-26, in 24-25 was 315 million, as I understand it.
We'll get Second Commissioner David Allen and Chief Operating Officer to assist with this one.
Thank you. So I have a figure of 315 million on external labour in 24-25 in response to questions on notice 404 and 096. Does that sound familiar?
Sorry, Senator, I might just need to check with RT here for the question on notice to see whether it actually relates to frontline ops or...
I think it's the total.
Yeah, that is the number, yeah. Right. Thank you.
In response to question on notice SBE 396, the ATO confirmed that call centre work is considered core work under the Strategic Commissioning Framework, and that the ATO is considering further opportunities to bring core work back in-house. Notwithstanding this, the ATO continues to rely on for-profit external call centres operated by Probe, Concentrix and Serco, which has been the subject of public scrutiny of late. Given that you have acknowledged call centre functions are core work, why has all this work not already been insourced?
Yes, I might start, Senator, and then hand to my colleague. You're quite correct, that is core work in the ATO. Most of the work that we do in the ATO is core work. We have very little that is outside of that. And most of the work that's done in frontline ops is core. However, from time to time, because of things like tax time, there are surges in demand. And also we do have to manage the time difference for different parts of the country and after hours calls. So we like to provide a really good service. So sometimes we will be using external outsourced labour to manage that demand. But I might just hand to my colleague who's got a lot more detail, Mr. Allen, who runs frontline ops.
So we've had outsourced for over 20 years, or around 20 years, and as you say, we've got 3 providers at the moment. Over the last 2 years, we've been slightly reducing the level of our purchase, and we purchase workload seconds through those providers. And we've also similarly been increasing the level of our resourcing. So last year, we added an extra 325 additional FTE into our sort of frontline services. So over time, we're starting to do a little bit of some rebalancing, but we need to also appreciate that we've got quite a lot of demand on our services at the moment. We've got increased demand, particularly around compromised identities, people being able to get a linking code so they can get into MyID and onto the systems. And what outsource is very good for is those high volume, low complexity type work. They answered around 50% of our calls last year. So we, as Ms Curtis said, this is all core work, but over the next few years we're continuing to think about how we can start to kind of like delineate some of our services a little bit. So for example, just recently we made the decision to take the remissions of general interest charge submissions that taxpayers make out of our outsource environment, and we've brought that in-house and we've built a dedicated team to manage that. So in those areas where we think that it's important to have, or there may be more complex issues, or there's things that we want an internal workforce to be managing, we'll be doing some of those shifts. However, I do think that even over the sort of the medium term, there will be a requirement to have some form of outsource to do those high volume, low complexity type activities. And as Ms Curtis said, particularly in our environment where we have this really significant surge and requirement for additional resources through tax time, and also they play a very critical role in supporting our after hours work, because we don't have any contact centres in WA, so they work through in daylight saving through to 9 p.m. to support our western states as well.
So if I look at the reduction that you made in your external labour in 24-25, it was down by 31.9 million, I think, but only 500,000 in this more recent year, 25-26. What massive effort one year, very little next. You know, what's going on there? And you mentioned you've got plans ahead. Yes, how concerted is your effort?
Well, quite right in saying that our target was 31.9 million, Senator, but in fact we actually exceeded that. Last year we reduced by 80.4 million in core work and brought that back in-house. And most of that, or much of that, was in frontline operations. There was some in other areas. But this year, we are still committed to bring down the amount of work that is core work, which is done outside. And our target does reflect that. That's not to say, though, that we won't try to exceed the target like we did last year.
So you've grown your FTE, your ongoing workforce by 325, and they've been employed instead of contract labour. Have I understood that correct?
Well, we've got a lot of demand in our business, so we're growing our internal as we're starting to sort of reduce some of our outsource as well.
And have you sought an increase in your ASL given the surge that you've talked about and the growing demand in the coming period? No?
No, Senator. We've actually been managing very well within our ASL. We do obviously have natural attrition that contributes to some of that. But our FTE, it's really, we're remaining quite stable. What the big shift is the mix between ongoing, non-ongoing and casual. So what we've tried to do is bring a lot more into ongoing work, and at the moment we're looking at about 95% of our nearly 96% of our paid FTE is actually ongoing employment.
And what proportion is casual?
Casual is 3.7% and non-ongoing 0.3%.
And is your non-ongoing through labour hire or limited term contracts? Or
we have very, very limited labour hire. In fact, most of that, if we have any at all, is in the IT area.
Okay.
It's really non-ongoing contracts, which would be up to about 3 years.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for those answers. Yep, I've got a bit more.
Do you have more? So do you know more for... Okay, so...
Won't be long.
You don't have any more for this group?
I have one very short question for the ATO.
Yep, please ask that now, and then we'll go to you, and then hopefully we can let these people go.
Just briefly, is there a statement of expectations in place for the ATO?
That's actually a question for the Treasury, I think.
Okay.
There is
it's you, Ms Brown.
Yeah, Senator. There is a statement of expectations in place. I will admit it is quite old.
I think it's from 2019.
It could be completely correct, yep.
Okay.
We are in the process of updating it in accordance with the expectation from ministers following the Economic Reform Roundtable that the statement of expectations be updated.
Is there any reason it hadn't been done before the Economic Reform Roundtable? Because it has been 7 years now, and they're meant to be important, policy and strategic documents to guide the work of.
Yeah, we have been working with government for a number of years on updating the statement of expectation. I can't explain all the years it hasn't been updated, but there is or has been, I believe it's a guidance from the Department of Finance that they do be updated whenever there's a new minister. And so we did start doing a statement of expectations before the Economic Reform Roundtable.
Have previous statements, earlier versions of the statement of expectations been drafted and provided to the Treasurer's office and not approved?
As I said, it's been kind of an ongoing conversation. I might need to have to take that particular question on notice, because I think the election may have changed, may have altered something just in the back of my mind. So I just want to make sure I'm completely factually correct there.
Okay, yeah. If you could take on notice, please have draft statements of expectation for the ATO being passed to the Treasurer's office, and if so, on how many occasions and when. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Pocock.
Thank you. I don't think I'll hold you up much longer, but a couple of things. The ATO Ombudsman found in a report published in October that tax agents report a poor experience calling the ATO phone lines, citing inconsistency and a lack of relevant knowledge or expertise in the officers they speak with. They also noted this issue appears to have worsened in the last 2 years. The Guardian Australia has reported numerous case studies of outsourced call centre staff complaining about lack of training, extreme staff turnover, focus on call volumes over quality. Does the ATO concede this is a problem, and what have you done about it?
We're continually looking at our service standards across both our in-source and our outsource. We run a quality framework, which effectively does sample testing of interactions between our in-source and outsource and taxpayers. Broadly speaking, our quality is very high, and it's actually very comparable between internal and outsource. But of course, we take seriously and the feedback from the Tax Ombudsman, and we're doing work at the moment to look at how we can continue to, revamp our training, continue our sort of training and support for our outsource and our insource to improve our taxpayer experience. One of the issues that was particularly raised by the Tax Ombudsman was around our management of general interest charge remissions. That was one the tax agents called out as concerns around inconsistency, and that's the example I mentioned before, that we've actually decided to bring that in-house. We've put it into a dedicated team to improve the services to taxpayers by having a much more consistent service. That was something that was previously done across 3 different workforces. So actually bringing it into a single workforce, we think will improve the outcomes. And probably the other one just to mention is that, obviously we're very concerned, particularly around vulnerable taxpayers. So last year we made a significant investment in having more resources into our tailored support hub. We retrained all our staff, both our internal and external, to be able to identify vulnerable taxpayers and really improve that transfer into this dedicated hub. So we absolutely take on board that feedback, and we're continuing to sort of improve our services where we can.
Clearly people are watching closely, so that won't go away. There's currently a same job, same pay application before the Fair Work Commission by an outsourced call centre worker who worked the ATO's phone lines but says they didn't receive the same pay and conditions as public servants doing exactly the same work. If the application is successful, will the ATO stop outsourcing the call work?
I think with that, Senator, depending on the application, we're on, as Mr Allen explained, we're on the process of bringing more in-house. There are sort of speed limits on that, both in terms of our ASL cap and our budget. But we'll be looking to, I think, irrespective of the case, we'll be looking to continue the path that Mr Allen said, depending on what the Fair Work Commission comes down with and any commentary they have, that might affect the pace, but we won't know until we get to that. But either way, as Mr Allen said, that process of gradually bringing more in-house will be continuing on that path. Accepting that, we'll probably never get to the point where it's all in-house, because as explained, we'll need to retain some sort of flexibility.
Thank you. I think I'll be interested to review that again in the future. I've got some questions finally about the tax arrangements of the 10 largest contractors who deliver Australia's official development assistance, ODA. I've previously asked DFAT for the tax arrangements of these organisations, and they've stated that they don't have this information, and they've directed me to come to you. Could you provide on notice the details on the country of tax residency and the ultimate parent entity's country of tax residency for the following managing contracts over the last 5 years? So I'm not asking for quantums, I'm asking for the country of residency and the parent entity's country. I'll read them out, but I can give them to you in writing if that's helpful. Palladium International, DT Global Asia Pacific, ABT Associates, the Trust Company Australia, John Staff International Development, the Boston Consulting Group, Cardno Emerging Markets, Co-Water International, Manta Ray Solutions, and Downer EDI Engineering Power. I'm really interested to know those facts in relation to those companies, and I would be very curious, and I don't know if you can tell me, which of them paid no tax in Australia? Are you able to provide me with that in relation to those companies?
I will take that on notice, Senator.
Thank you. Thanks for all your answers. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes our block with this group of witnesses. Thank you very much for all of your time. And I will now call up representatives from the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority to make their way to the table, please.
Sorry about keeping everyone here.
That's okay. I think that's where we're up to. I'm getting a bit delirious.
Yes, no, I feel you. And look, in my old age, I've become a two-phone wanker.
Oh, you got your drug deal side thing going on.
Yeah. There's so much meth moving through this place.
Oh, thank you.
What's happening? He's called.
Yeah, he's I reckon the rest of the shadow will go tomorrow.
Yeah, you have to, yeah. Well, there's been a petition. I don't think he would have done it if he didn't have this. No, because then Hasty will realise the petition.
Oh dear. We're good to go. Welcome to the representatives from the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority. I see you have circulated, we've got your opening statement here circulated. Would you like to speak to this or take it as read?
Good evening, Chair. So ordinarily I'm happy to table it. In fact, I'm happy to table it. But there's a piece I just wanted to just talk to very briefly, and I know you're behind,
Please.
but I will speak very briefly to it.
Right ahead.
And I think it's important because last time we appeared before the committee, there were a lot of questions, and a lot of questions we took on notice on Shield and First Guardian. So I just want to make clear, as a prudential regulator, APRA is responsible for ensuring that superannuation trustees adhere to the requirement of the SIS Act, so the law, and prudential standards relating to onboarding, ongoing due diligence and monitoring of investment options. It is the trustee's responsibility to determine whether or not options are suitable for them to offer and monitor against the rules that are set. Trustees, though, are only part of the chain of involvement in the Shield and First Guardian situation that APRA has the power to regulate. To be clear, APRA does not regulate and could not have regulated Shield and First Guardian, which were managed investment schemes subject to regulation by ASIC. We note that the way the Australian superannuation system is designed, members have the ability to exercise choice. Members may enter platform products for a variety of reasons, and these considerations are also beyond our regulatory remit. Over the past year, APRA has undertaken a substantial review of major platform trustees who collectively represent around 95% of funds under management for platform products. The scope of that review was broader than only First Guardian and Shield. The review identified weaknesses in the practices of some trustees, such as onboarding practices, the monitoring of investment options, and remedial action where member outcomes are not being achieved. APRA required trustees to review their practices, address weaknesses, and report breaches of the prudential standards to us as a matter of urgency. APRA also undertook individual assessments of trustees. As a result of this, APRA took strong enforcement action to hold trustees to account for breaches of APRA standards or poor practices. In December last year, APRA accepted a court-enforceable undertaking from Net Wealth and imposed licence conditions on Diversa trustees and equity trustees to address investment governance-related concerns. There are a number of actions ASIC has taken against trustees which are now before the courts, and the outcomes and the facts about what happened will take some time to be determined. Finally, APRA continues to coordinate closely with ASIC on the regulatory response to the unacceptable community outcomes resulting from the collapses of these schemes, and the actions already taken are not necessarily the end of APRA's enforcement response. With that, Chair, I'm very happy the members and I to take questions from the committee.
Thank you. First, Senator Canavan. Sharma.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, if that's right. Thanks. Thanks for your opening statement, Mr. Lonsdale, and sorry we're late getting to you tonight. I just want to, I'm relatively new to this sector, so just forgive my simple questions, but as I understand it, part of APRA's role, or maybe more than part of APRA's role, is prudential regulation of registrable superannuation entities, RSCs.
Yes.
That's the same as this language you use, is it superannuation trustees in your,
yes,
in your scheme? So that when you oversee around 56 superannuation trustees, that's an RSC licensee, same thing. Okay. And is it part of your mandate to examine or concern yourself with related party arrangements, potential conflicts of interest within these RSC licensees?
Well, I might ask Ms Cole. We have rules around that.
Yes, we have a standard on conflicts of interest, Senator, and we, as you know, our primary role is to, as a supervision agency, we have supervision relationships, therefore, with all the entities that are within our regulation. So in super there is a conflicts standard. My colleagues will remind me of the number of it if that matters, but that requires super trustees to have policies and procedures around conflicts management.
Right, okay. Okay, that's helpful. And there was one in particular I was interested in. I noticed you covered in your opening statement, diversa trustees, because I have heard industry concerns expressed to me about related party transactions, inflation of fees, misuse of members' funds, allegations, I admit, but I noticed you've taken, you mentioned in your opening statement here you took in imposed licence conditions, is that right?
Correct.
On diversa trustees?
Yep.
Why were they imposed? What was that in response to? What were the concerns with diversa trustees that led you to impose licence conditions?
So we had done significant amount of work in relation to platform trustees, which we heralded in our 24-25 corporate plan. And as the Chair mentioned in his opening statement, in that work we gathered in a great deal of information, and we put out a public letter to industry expressing concerns generically, or the sort of concerns we had about onboarding, monitoring, remediating issues. Because we had done that work, that gave us insight into a portion of the trustees operating the platform models where we felt we needed to push in and do more work with individual trustees. And as a result of that, in December last year, we imposed some licence conditions on actually 3 of the trustees. One was diversa. You remember last time, Senator, you might remember you asked questions and we had to be a bit coy about what we were saying.
Yeah, I do remember
because
that.
we were in the period.
None the wiser after
we
our
were in the
last
period
discussion.
where we were giving justice. You know, we were giving the opportunity to parties to say anything they wanted to say, but that culminated in licence conditions and court enforceable undertakings towards the end of last year to require trustees to address areas of concern in you know, we can give you far more detail if you would like to have that, because my colleagues here I think have it written down in front of them, so we can give you more about the licence conditions if you'd like.
Well, yeah, look, a little bit, and probably most interest though, what's the flavour of the areas of concern that caused you to impose those licence conditions? So it doesn't need to be chapter and verse, but a sort of thematic account if you
colleagues to my left who would like to address this.
I'm happy to answer that. So the sort of issues that we pushed into with the trustees were around the diligence with which they were onboarding investment options onto their platforms.
Okay.
The ongoing monitoring processes that they had in place to monitor whether those options were performing as expected, the management of conflicts of interest and what they would do to remediate the situation if an option was no longer seen as appropriate for their members. I'm happy to talk a little bit about what the licence conditions we imposed on diversa require.
Just before you get to that, so I'd heard specifically about Diversa debiting members to cover additional fees that it was charging at its own discretion. Was that brought to your attention? Was that an area that you noticed in your investigation?
Not sure I heard your question.
Sorry, yeah, I believe, and I might not be using the terminology correctly, but Diversa debiting members to cover additional fees that it was charging at its own discretion. So Diversa was billing members for services it provided without disclosing. I mean, it was sort of self-dealing.
I don't think that was one of the issues that we were aware of or were covering in those licence conditions. We'd have to go back to that. Yeah. So if you have further information you'd like to give us, we'll look into that. Okay, all right. As part of the sort of investigations, I mean, do you speak to the sub-funds, the platform products for these RSC licensees?
So the way we approached this matter was to request information using our information gathering powers and assess that information against our standards to see whether or not they were up to our required standards. So it was more engagement with the entity itself and gathering information from the entity itself rather than the underlying products.
I see, okay.
But perhaps it might be helpful to talk about what we are doing under the licence conditions.
Yeah, please, I was going to ask you.
Perhaps helps to address this.
To go to that now, thank you.
Under the licence conditions, Diversa and the other trustees required to appoint an independent expert to conduct a review of the high-risk products on their platforms, review their investment governance frameworks. So I would expect that review would look into a whole range of issues around how the frameworks are being operationalised. They then need to develop and implement a plan to address any recommendations that the independent expert makes, provide assurance to APRA that the actions under the plan are complete and effective to address our concerns. They need to do a review of their platform investment menu for certain products to make sure that those products have ongoing suitability, and they're required to refrain from onboarding new high-risk investment options to the platform until the independent expert verifies that. So there is a whole range of things that they need to do to address the sort of concerns you're raising.
And they remain subject to a more intensive regime of supervision whilst those conditions are in place?
Absolutely. Yes. Senator, can I make one contextual point? Because I hope it's helpful, because we've been talking a lot about products. So just to let you know the level that we're operating in. So the review that Ms Cole talked about on platforms covered 95% of the platform products. Mm-hmm. There's around 17,000 of them on the platforms. So what we're not doing is examining each one of those products.
Each of the products on the platforms,
right?
Yeah.
So what we do though, is set rules, as Mr Colhagen said, on how those products are onboarded, the monitoring that needs to happen and how they're off-boarded. So we are in the rule-setting space and we expect trustees to adhere to those rules. And so when we're taking enforcement action, what we found is trustees are not at the level that we need them to be at for the rules.
Understood, thank you. Ms Cole, I might take up on that offer of providing further information once I get a little more detail. I'll write to you separately.
Helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. That was all from me, Chair.
Just a couple of questions. I shouldn't take too long. I've got some questions about the actions you've taken to limit high-risk loans that you announced on the 27th of November last year. Just to recap, that was the decision to place a 20% cap on new lending to borrowers whose debt is 6 times or more their income. Have I got that right?
That's correct, Senator.
Yeah, thank you. What's been the impact? Have you done, or let me start, has APRA done any analysis of the impact of its decision to limit high debt loans to high debt to income loans since implementation?
Well, at this stage, Senator, it's too early to talk about impact, I would say. So the measure formally became operational from the 1st of this month. I think one impact I can draw your attention to is a question that you asked at the last hearing, and it related to a very small group of banks where the guardrails that we set at the 20% would actually be binding. Do you remember that conversation that we had? Mm. So for those banks, of which there are 4, the impact has been that we are assured that that flow for those binding banks will come back. So for those, it has certainly had an impact, but for the broader populace of the banks and what we're seeing on lending, I think, Senator, it is too early to tell, but we are monitoring very closely.
Do you have any sense, I'll take your point, it's very, very early, about what type of borrowers it's impacted the most? Investors, home buyers, any sense about that? Still too early?
Well, yeah, as we spoke before, you know, the limit has been set to a non-binding level for both owner-occupiers and investors. I think the last time we spoke in December, the DTI amount, the debt-to-income aggregate amount, was 6% of the flow. We're setting at 20%, of which investors were 10%. Mm-hmm. And owner-occupiers were 4%.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
We've had one other data point since that time, and it's preliminary data. So I just want you to take that at face value. It's preliminary data. Owner-occupiers remain the same for the December quarter, but investors have continued to increase, so probably by another percentage point, and the aggregate increased by around another percentage point, so roughly from 6 to 7. That's the best reading, Senator, I can give you at this point.
So the RBA Governor flagged credit growth as a concern in her last rate increase press conference, and Westpac reported a 1% increase in investor lending in December 2025 and only a 0.5% increase for owner-occupiers. And you will have seen, I assume, the new data today.
Yes, Senator.
Of a $43 billion investor drawdown of funds, a 31.8% increase on the year December to December. Do you think these figures are a concern, the new figures today?
Well, we're watching the housing market and lending and aggregates more broadly in this area very closely, as we've talked about. Our primary concern, though, in this area is around credit quality. That's where we're watching very closely. So credit quality and also around stability of the system. But credit quality where we've been watching very closely. As we talked last month, or December, we were concerned at the prospect of higher debt-to-income lending, and that's why we took the preemptive action. Not a lot has changed in that space, as we just talked about. Since December, we've had another data feed on high DTI lending. We're watching high loan-to-valuation lending, and we're also looking at commitments on first home buyers, and we've also had an interest rate increase as well. So there's a bit of movement, but in terms of the aggregate data, it's too early to change our assessment from when we last spoke.
How long do you think, how much data are you looking for before you might reassess? What kind of timeline might you think?
Well, we don't set those, Senator, but I'm very happy to come back, which we always do. I look forward to these sessions. We'll do it again in May and give you an update then. And if you would like something earlier, we of course are very happy to do that.
Thank you. And I've already had a briefing which I really appreciated from your office. And you made it very clear in that briefing, your people did, that you are a prudential body, not a policy body. But have you ever applied a risk lens to the question of housing affordability and the inequitable distribution of housing? Is it not possible to argue that there is a risk associated with very wide levels and widening levels of inequality in the housing ownership market and the affordability? Do you think there is a risk element there?
Senator, we are focused, as I said, on the biggest picture issue, which is stability. There are, of course, distributional aspects when you're looking at housing. Of course there are. they are typically not the domain of the prudential regulator because they go to a much broader set of issues than just prudential regulation. And even if the prudential regulator was concerned, it does not really have the sets of tools, right? So it's not within really our mandate to deal with the distributional aspects.
Do any prudential regulators around the world have a responsibility to consider equity in housing when they make prudential decisions?
Well, there are a lot of prudential regulators globally. I'm happy to come back to you with an authoritative answer, but generally speaking, the prudential regulators would focus very heavily on stability of the system, the safety of depositors' funds. There are some that have specific mandates around competition and around other economy-wide issues, but I'm struggling to think of one with the distributional components. But I'm very happy to have a look and come back to you if that's useful.
I think about the Reserve Bank, which has got the dual responsibility of stability in the financial and the monetary system, but also to ensure full employment, which is an equity goal essentially.
Yes.
Just wonder if there are such creatures elsewhere in the world. So thank you. That's the end of my questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Bragg.
Just quickly, so the 5% deposit scheme.
Yes, Senator.
So these are riskier loans, aren't they?
Well, let me make a general statement that doesn't go to the home guarantee scheme specifically, Senator, but as a general comment, the higher the loan to valuation ratio, the higher the probability of default. That's the principle that we operate on, and that's the principle that we apply our prudential regulation on.
So 95% LVR loans, most people would say those are pretty risky, wouldn't they?
Well, as I said, Senator, the higher the leverage, the riskier the loan.
So you've said you're concerned with the pickup in higher risk mortgage lending overall. Now you're talking about owner-occupied and investment loans?
What we've said, Senator, that I think we talked about last time we came was that
Talked about many issues, Mr Lonsdale.
Sorry?
We talked about many issues, Mr Lonsdale.
Yes, we did. But on risk as it related to lending, the conversation concentrated not on high LVR loans, but on what we were doing on high debt-to-income loans.
Debt-to-income, yeah.
Which is more of an issue for investors than it is on first home buyers. And it was the growth that we were seeing for high debt-to-income lending that caused us some concern that led to the imposition of the guardrails.
So high debt-to-income lending is a concern, owner-occupied and investment loans, both?
Senator Bragg, thank you. Therese McCarthy-Hockey. I think you're asking a really good question, and that is how do we think about the risk? And we are saying that in general, you would say a high LVR is higher risk.
Yeah.
Therefore, what we think about is the measures of resilience that support that risk. And what we are doing, and we're doing three things. The first is that we require the banks to have internal risk appetite set against the actual ALVR, not adjusted for the scheme or any schemes relevant. We are also requiring the capital allocation to be, again, based on the base level of the LVR, and that's for the, it's called the IRB, or the internal rating-based banks. Now, that's basically, or largely, the major banks, and that's most of the system. For most of the system, therefore, they have capital allocated at an unadjusted basis, you would, if I put that simply. And then the last thing is that we require them to, all banks, to continue good serviceability assessments and other lending. So it's fair to say that the shape of lending changes over time, through time, What we look at is what are the resilience measures that go against that, and that's why we've got those three things we're doing, that we say, well, in the main, with those lending occurring, this is a conservative setting.
This is your new macroprudential tools.
So the macroprudential tools is a different thing. This is talking about the actual capital on each loan,
right?
And
but that's what you do for prudential purposes anyway, right?
That's right.
But I thought the debt to income ratio that you flagged a while ago, only a few months ago, Mr. Lonsdale, was in relation to deploying a new macroprudential tool. Is that right, or have I got that wrong?
So it is a new prudential tool, macroprudential tool for us, for Australia. Other countries have used the tool. Yes, Senator.
So it's a debt to income speed limit on the institution, or so on their whole book?
On the flow of loans being written.
So, but that's for investor loans and for owner-occupied?
Correct. There are separate buckets.
Okay, and so they've got their own speed limits?
Well, it's the same speed limit, but
you look at them in
but the buckets are applied separately.
Okay, so are you more worried about investor loans or more worried about owner-occupied?
Investor loans, Senator.
Finally then, are you collecting any data in relation to people who are using the 5% deposit scheme? I mean, obviously you collect information from the banks about the riskiness of their book. These are risky loans by definition under your own measurements. Do you?
That wasn't the evidence that they gave, Senator.
So 95% loans pretty risky.
So you assert that.
It's a fact.
They've been quite well. That's your.
Do you want to know what a high LVR is?
That's your propaganda.
Be anything over 80%.
I know you don't like the scheme, but the officials have been quite careful.
I don't mind the scheme. I just wouldn't give it to
the officials
millionaires and billionaires.
The officials have been
people.
quite careful to answer your questions on the basis of their evidence and their frameworks. Don't verbal them. Ask them a question that they can answer.
Thank you very much. So the question is, will you collect more information about people who are in the 5% deposit scheme?
Senator, I'd like to come back to you with, because it's a very specific question on the scheme itself. What I can say generally is that we do have information on first home buyers, which is a broader set, and the December point that we have, which is new information that we didn't have the last time we were here, is that first home buyers' share of new commitments, which isn't a loan yet, it's a commitment from the bank, has increased from 16.8 to 17.8 in the December quarter. But that's a broader aggregate, that's for first home buyers. But we will come back on the scheme itself.
Yep, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Has APRA asked insurance companies to consider the risks of climate change when setting their prudential requirements to stay solvent?
I'll ask Ms Smith to answer, Senator.
Cool.
Thank you. So the risk of climate-related risks are one of the risks that we ask all regulated entities to consider, like cyber risk, climate-related risks feature in our non-financial risk framework. So, yes.
Okay. So I suppose if they're considering it, that means, effectively means they need to increase their premiums to factor in that risk. Are you aware of reports that last year insurance companies banked a record annual profit of $6.1 billion?
So I think yes, I mean, I think that's a reported number that there was profitability in the insurance sector last year. That's right.
So, I mean, the issue here is isn't there a risk that your advice that you're giving them could be easily just used as a shield for insurance companies to raise premiums, blame climate yourselves, and then pocket a whole lot of money on the backs of Australian insurance customers?
So as the prudential regulator, what we expect insurance companies and any regulated entity to do is understand the risks associated with the business that they run. So whether that's a climate-related risk or a cyber risk or any other technology operational related risk, we expect that to be factored in. So we don't have any advice per se to regulated entities as to what they charge with premiums. Premiums are a matter for individual insurance companies to set those premiums, and that will be related to the assessment of the risks in the environment that they're facing. So to the extent that there have been significant catastrophes, I think in 2025, the start of the year saw a lower level of catastrophes, but towards the end of last year we saw concurrent cyclones, bushfires and storms. The risks associated with that they're seeing through their books will be featured, will be a factor contributing to the premiums.
Right, okay. Do you keep data on how many people are uninsured or underinsured?
So no, we don't hold that specific data. I think the Insurance Council of Australia may have that data, but we don't hold that specific data.
Is that at all, do you consider that potentially a risk to prudential settings, in the sense that if people are uninsured, something happens, they can't pay for their repairs, and that may impact their ability to service mortgages and the like?
So I think from a prudential setting, what we're looking at is the capital that insurance companies hold relative to the obligations that they've made to pay policyholders. So that's a really important piece of information that we look at from a financial resilience perspective, and we would say that the general insurance sector is sound. That's a different question to the community issue that we know is emerging with regard to many consumers in the country that may choose not to insure because premiums are expensive or underinsure for a range of reasons.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting that anecdotally. Look, just given the time, I'll move on to your stakeholder survey. I did note in that sorry, wrong tab, that 24% of regulated entities don't believe you. I think it's don't believe. Hang on, sorry, just let me find this again. Had it all there. Yeah, only 24% think you sufficiently consider costs that either very well or moderately well when setting prudential frameworks, and 35% say inadequate. Have you look? You do rate pretty highly on everything else. That's the one that you fall down on a touch. Is that something you're looking at in response to the stakeholder survey?
Yeah, I mean, our goal, we have a mandate. It's to keep the financial system safe in its simplest form, and we want to do that in the most efficient way that we can. In the supervision work that we're doing and in the policy, in the rules that we set, if you like, I can tell you that we do spend quite a bit of time, the people at this table, actually asking for the cost benefit. Well, okay, you can always put on more regulation, but actually what is the cost of this relative to the safety? There's a big focus on that. The other thing I would say is that following the Treasurer's round table, I wrote to the Treasurer with 9 initiatives that we were taking forward to actually improve efficiency in what we were doing. 5 of them we've consulted on already. A major one that we're working on right now is how we can better share data. So when you go and see entities, one of their big complaints is that you've asked for data, APRA, but actually another regulator's asked for very similar data, and we're doing a lot of work to understand where those pinch points are. And I can tell you over the last year, very pleasingly, our sharing data stats have gone up by 40% in terms of the data that we're actually sharing, and we think that that's very positive for efficiency in the system. So I just tell you that story because it is something that we're very conscious of and something that we want to improve on.
Okay, that's great to hear. I only just looked at the stakeholder survey today, so I haven't been through it in detail, but I couldn't find any of the results split up for the customer-owned banking sector or some of those smaller entities. That they're often the ones I do get complaints. They feel sometimes that the settings are made for the larger institutions and might miss the idiosyncrasies of their businesses. Do you collect that data or have that data at all about how they're feeling about regulatory settings?
So we spend a lot of time with regional banks, small banks, small insurers. We last year had a 12-month process that was commissioned and worked on by the CFR to look specifically at competition, how these entities were actually running their businesses and what the regulation actually applied and whether there were any burden issues. And there are a range of recommendations that came out of that which we've acted on. But we actually spend a lot of time, Senator, at the small end of town understanding their concerns. Ms McCarthy Hockey and I attend the COBA board meeting. We've got one-on-one relationships with CEOs to understand their concerns.
Okay, all right, well, that'll do me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. And I would just note that we're running significantly behind, so if you could keep your questions tight.
That'll be fairly short.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for appearing tonight.
Thank you, Senator,
have
for
a good
having
evening.
us.
APRA is updating the General Insurance Code of Practice. Can you provide the release date of the final code and the commencement date? I understand you're aiming for 1st of July 2026.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. The Code of Practice is actually being through ASIC, and they're appearing after us.
Next. Okay, thank you.
That's very good.
Very
That's
good.
amazing. Thank you, Malcolm. With that, we can say goodbye to our friends at APRA. Thank you very much.
Thanks, committee.
And we will now invite the Australian Securities and Investments Commission to join us.
Thank you. See you later. Thank you.
So Barb's got a set. Barb's got a set. You might have some for here. Yeah, and. Okay. Okay.
Thankfully, Susan and David made that announcement on Sunday. Otherwise, there'd be nobody from the coalition here.
I'd still be here.
I know you'd still be here. I don't doubt that. I'm just saying, you're a representative of
Love the game.
both parties, I suppose. The other team are busy, I see.
Okay. Alrighty, everyone's settling. We'll kick off. The committee welcomes representatives from the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. And I see you have an opening statement that has been circulated. Would you like to speak to that or take it as read?
I was going to speak to it, but given the hour, I'm very happy to take it as read, save you some time.
Thank you very much, Ms Court. I will go to Senator Roberts first.
Thank you for appearing tonight.
Hello, Senator.
Hope that this session is a bit longer than the previous one, but anyway. Ms Roxa Misco, are you aware of her?
I will try to be. The name is vaguely familiar, Senator, but...
R-O-X-A-N-N-E, Roxanne Misco, M-Y-S-K-O.
Is there a company that Ms Misco is associated with that you could help me with?
I think she's a whistleblower. Yeah, she's a whistleblower to you guys.
if that's the case, I won't be able to speak about anything to do with that, Senator, but I'll just let me check with Mr Savandra just to make sure, to see if we have anything that we can assist you with here.
Well, I'll ask the question, you can decide.
Thank you, Senator.
Ms Roxanne Misco is an honest person who discovered that there were significant failings of safety in the trucking industry. She found that international corporations, including Santos and Ensign, had contracted ECS project logistics as freight logistics. ECS and approximately 70 contractors operated with zero safety audits, fatigue controls and licence and registration checks done from 2007 to 2020. Why did ASIC fail to enforce the Corporations Act whistleblower protections?
I don't have any information about that with me.
Can you take it on notice?
Of course, I'll take it on notice.
Thank you. Why did ASIC refer whistleblower matters to the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator when ASIC has direct responsibility under Part 9.4 AAA?
I'll have to take that on notice as well, Senator.
Will ASIC reopen CAS-94551 and prosecute whistleblower retaliation, identify breaches and victimisation by Santos, Ensign and ECS under Part 9.4 AAA?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the document you're referring to, Senator, but again, I'm happy to take that on notice.
These disclosures by Ms Misco revealed grave safety failings in the heavy vehicle industry. These safety issues are of significant concern for all road users. Ms Misco has suffered terribly at the hands of big corporations and those public servants who have not done their jobs. Minister, when will this government get serious about protecting genuine whistleblowers and stop them from being victimised by wrongdoers?
I'm not sure. I mean, I have no knowledge of the matters that you raise, and I understand you've asked ASIC questions about how they may or may not have dealt with this, and they've taken on notice in terms of the extent to which you could make an argument that their responsibilities touch on this matter. But I have no knowledge of this set of circumstances, and I can't help you.
Would it be possible for you to comment once we get the answers from ASIC?
If there's anything that we can help you with, Senator, we will.
I'd like to know when this government will protect whistleblowers. That's all.
Well, that's a broader policy question that I'm not sure. ASIC's in a position to respond to.
No, I'm asking you for that.
Government will
Well, the broad approach that the government's taken in relation to whistleblower protections is probably a matter for the Attorney General.
Prosecuting. That's the approach.
I'm not sure here as representing the Treasurer that I'm in a position to provide you with very much information at all about this issue, as important as it is, both broadly and in relation to the person who you've referred to.
Well, I don't think that'll give whistleblowers much confidence, but thank you for your...
Well, then you should ask questions in the Attorney General's section on this set of questions if you want.
Thank you, Minister.
Genuinely looking for an answer.
Thanks, Chair, that's all.
Thank you. Senator Barbara Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here. And I've only got a couple of questions, but I wanted to go firstly to the question of corporate corruption. And I noticed that you, in your tabled report, draw our attention to a number of significant consequences for people who've done some probably very appalling things, insider trading and so on. But I wanted to go to the Leighton's case. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's recently been, maybe concluded. There may be further actions ahead, but I was really shocked to read of a really pathetic $1,000 fine for former Leighton Holdings Chief Operating Officer David Savage, who covered up a payment of $45 million in bribes to foreign politicians and was pursued through an incredibly long case for 10 years. I asked the AFP about it last night, and I'm hoping we'll get an estimate about how much it's cost the Australian public, but a huge amount of money. And this guy, who earned $2 million in the year in which he misled his directors and bought a French chateau with it, which he has since retreated to, having paid his $1,000 fine. I mean, most Australians pay a bigger traffic fine for speeding than this guy has for an incredibly dishonest act. So I'm really agitated about it, and I understand this was driven, this case, by the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions, but what role did ASIC play in this investigation outcome, and what does it tell us about the failure of our system, and what is ASIC's role in trying to deal with this kind of extraordinary outcome? I mean, in other countries, people who did the same thing as he did in the same process have been jailed for 3 years, for example, and had very extensive large fines in the US and other UK.
So
what are we doing wrong?
Senator Pocock, thank you for the question. I'm just going to check with our Executive Director of Enforcement and Compliance, Mr Savandra, as to whether ASIC had involvement in that matter. So if I could pass to Mr Savandra.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator, for the question. I'd like to take it on notice. It was a long time ago, and
the fine was this week. The fine was in the last 2 weeks.
I understand it, and the legal process can take a long time, but my understanding is that these events date back to, I think...
2011.
2011. At the time, ASIC took action from memory, and I'm operating from memory here, against Leighton Holdings in relation to continuous disclosure failures, and engaged with the AFP in relation to bribery and corruption, or allegations of bribery and corruption. We have regular engagement with the AFP. We provide assistance. In terms of foreign bribery, the AFP is the lead law enforcement agency. If they require any of the tools that are available to us, such as false accounting or breach of directors' duties, then they may refer matters to us, but we work closely through our memorandum of understanding with the AFP in relation to bribery, foreign bribery-related matters.
But I think it's right to say, Senator, that's in terms of the foreign bribery charges and the fine that you're referring to, that's not a matter that ASIC was involved in, at least in relation to those charges. And I'm grateful that you've referred to the opening statement that I had tabled, and one of the reasons that we put the particular cases that are referred to in the opening statement are that this committee has raised with us on several occasions previously concerns about people not being held to account for engaging in criminal corporate misconduct, and in recent months we've had a number of very significant sentences imposed for a range of different kinds of offending, insider trading, fraud, market manipulation and others, and I think it's important to bring to the committee's attention that we are working very hard to have custodial sentences imposed on individuals when there is evidence there to support it, and the courts seem to be responding to that, and we're working very closely with the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions in relation to those kind of matters.
Thank you for that. I'm wondering what are your forums for learning the lesson from a very expensive and long process, and do you take forward proposals to government which say, we need new tools in this toolbox, this is outrageous and it should outrage us all, it's wasting everyone's time and it's an incredible betrayal of trust. What mechanisms do you use to talk to the AFP and to reassess the failure of such a long process and poor outcome?
Yeah. Well, as I say, Senator, we were not that's a different, it's not an ASIC-related charge, it's a foreign bribery charge run by the AFP. I think it's fair to say, though, we do have matters that come before the Commission from time to time where we have to make decisions about whether or not to take a matter criminally, so refer it through to the Director of Public Prosecutions, or run the matter civilly. indeed, we've had one such matter just earlier this week, and it is the case, I think, that certainly within the Corporations Act there are a number of maximum fines available for criminal prosecutions that I think it's fair to say are woefully inadequate, particularly when compared to the kinds of penalties that the court might impose if we take a matter down a civil track. Now, there is it's a very significant, irrespective of the size of the fine, having a conviction recorded against you is a very significant outcome, and one that people, in many occasions would like to pay a whole lot of money if they could avoid having a conviction
I doubt that
against
Mr
them.
Savage is very inconvenienced or worried about it. He's probably got it framed on his chateau wall.
I'm not providing any comment on that particular matter, but the point that you make is one that we would accept with respect, which is that there are, on the statute, maximum penalties for criminal offences that are too low.
Yeah. I mean, the whole question of how we treat misbehaviour in our system, which I know is a major priority for you and ASIC, it really worries me, and I'll just... One other small thing, it's just right at the other end of the scale, but last time we met we talked about KPMG and the most recent example of their cheating on, audit exams, and we had a discussion, Ms O'Rourke and I, where you clarified KPMG had, as I recollect, a mass cheating using AI. And you pointed out that you had only some say over auditors who were registered company auditors, RCAs. In your Quan response, you point out that KPMG did not notify to you that they did have an RCA, one of those individuals, who should have reported that they had breached a code of conduct or had faced a potentially disciplinary action against them, as they are required to do. And they didn't do it. And what happened? What was the consequence? What happened when they didn't do what they were meant to do and tell you about it?
Yeah, so I think that's right. We did take those additional steps to find out what we could in relation to that matter. So we did take the extra step of also finding out if there was any action by any of the professional accounting bodies that people belong to, and we've been advised that there hasn't been. So that's the next step that was taken by us. I think we described that in the Quan as well, but there's no additional step in relation to...
You actually asked KPMG, didn't you? They did not come to you, and then they fess up and recognise that they should have, in relation to this leader of auditors in a huge firm with many hundreds of auditors, no doubt, so they haven't. You've raised it. They say, yep, we've got one person who should have fessed up to you, and then you tell the professional bodies that this has happened.
Sorry. So the obligation, I think implicit in your question, is that there was a duty to tell us on the RCA that was not undertaken. Actually, the obligation to tell us as ASIC is only triggered if there has been a disciplinary action by one of the professional accounting bodies. Okay. And that's, as we've been told, that there has not been such a disciplinary action. So forgive me if I wasn't clear enough earlier. So it's not that there was something that should have been spoken to us about or reported to us that hasn't been. On inquiry, we've determined that there hasn't been. So that's why we've not taken any additional steps at this stage.
Because the relevant professional body has not taken any action and perhaps has not been notified about this misdemeanour of cheating using AI, then you have no means of taking any action in relation to this person.
That's right. That notification requirement to us has not been triggered. So
What's your view
we made the voluntary inquiries, and I think we were keen to understand the level of concern or the level of action and indeed the level of seniority of the people, which is signified by whether they are RCAs or not. And so that does speak to some of the limitations associated with the work and the regulatory hooks that we've got. I think we've spoken about that in relation to the firms. There's no...
I know, very small oversight.
Guidance there, so...
Well, that's extremely disappointing. We've got a toothless system where con artists of a massive proportion get away with so much. As the average punter out there, gets caught for a very small misdemeanour and they are going to be in the court or fined a lot of money, and this mob walk away to the chateau. So very sad. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Canavan.
Others?
Senator Pocock has questions for ASIC as well. We want to try and...
happy to let the crossbench go first.
Okay.
To manage the time here.
Pocock.
Congratulations on your appointment, which I understand begins on the 1st of July.
1st of June, Senator.
1st of June.
Thank you very much.
Mr Longo couldn't make it tonight?
Mr Longo's on long planned leave, Senator Pocock.
Okay. Actually had some questions around the policies relating to Mr Longo's exit and how ASIC sort of works when someone comes to the end of their time. Will the outgoing chair be subject to any restrictions in terms of his next employment? Any cooling off period, enforced gardening leave as it's called?
Senator Pocock, I might see, is my CEO at the table? Yes, he is. I might pass that over to Mr Gregson, who has a great knowledge of all of those things, but I can assure you those kinds of conflicts of interest are something we, of course, take very seriously.
That's good to hear.
Mr Gregson.
Senator Scott Gregson, Chief Executive Officer at ASIC. We have a number of policies and procedures that guard against potential conflicts of interest, both while in office and beyond. That includes a code of conduct that applies to commissioners and, in this case, the chair. That requires that conflicts aren't entered into while in the job and beyond. There's further obligations and policies and guardrails about how we remind exiting members of those continuing obligations about confidentiality, not to place yourself in a position of conflict. I think on the last occasion, Mr Longo gave an indication about how he intends to conduct himself post-appointment, including that he doesn't have any current intentions or designs in relation to future positions.
So what does that actually mean? What would someone like Mr Longo be stopped from doing in terms of going into a job or a board position?
So there is no blanket position in preventing roles being taken up, but there is very strict rules about not taking confidential information.
Sorry, hang on. So you just told me that there were all sorts of policies and procedures in place, but he could literally walk out from ASIC to the board of any of our big companies, and the next day, that's fine.
Well, certainly the next day would be raising concerns over obligations to advise of any intention to do so prior to departure. So if there's any intentions to do so, there's requirements to disclose that. But in terms of what happens down the track, we're bound by the continuing obligations of confidentiality and the conflicts position.
Has Mr Longo informed you of his intention to join any boards or...?
He certainly hasn't, in fact, consistent with his advice to the Senate committee on the last occasion, has indicated that he has no such invitations or plans in place.
Mm-hmm. And so you're not aware of whether Mr Longo has received any offers or commenced any discussions about serving on any boards when he finishes his time
as
Chair?
Senator.
No, I'm not aware of that either, Senator. And I should say also, as I understand it, Mr Longo is looking forward to having a long break and doing a lot of travelling. And I'm very conscious that he, were there any suggestion that he was going to move quickly into one of the boards or areas that we regulate, that he would disclose that immediately. That's what would be expected.
Okay. Well, given he's not here, maybe you could just take on notice. I was watching his interview with Sarah Ferguson, and maybe just on notice if you can ask Mr Longo whether he's been in any discussions or considerations of him joining the ANZ board, if that's okay.
Given ASIC's history with ANZ, I'm not sure Mr Longo would be welcome around the ANZ board table, but I absolutely can take that on notice, Senator.
I mean, that being said, there were criticisms that the fine wasn't big enough. You know, I think their most recent profit was $3.6 billion, and for the sort of what I thought were pretty heinous actions, 240 mil, the court then ends up having to add another 10 mil. So I think that's probably could be debated.
Well, it did, Senator, but and I've given evidence, as has Mr Longo, about the size of the ANZ penalty previously to this committee. I think it is worth bearing in mind, recognising that the bank makes big profits, that combined penalty was certainly far and away the most significant penalty imposed by a court on a single entity, certainly in ASIC's history. I think it more than doubled the penalty imposed against Westpac some years earlier. And you're absolutely right that the federal court determined when ASIC put that penalty to the court to increase the penalty in relation to one of the courses of conduct by $10 million. But, in our view, we welcome that attention by the court. I mean, that is the system working. The ASIC puts penalties to a court looks at the evidence, asks questions very appropriately and makes its own decision about whether or not the penalty imposed is an appropriate deterrent in all the circumstances, including the profits made by the bank. And in that case, as I say, we welcome the court increasing the penalty by $10 million, and the judge obviously considered that carefully and asked the questions. But, in terms of 240 to 250 million, I mean, it is a reasonably marginal difference that the court concluded, but as I say, we respect that and welcome it.
Sure. But I guess for Australians out there, it's still $240 million when you're making $3.6 billion of profit. So
I understand the point you're making,
back
Senator.
to Senator Barbara Pocock's example of a $1,000 fine for some guy who's made off with $2 million. I'm interested in your plans for the organisation going forward, Ms. Court. Concerns have been raised that ASIC isn't sufficiently resourced to clamp down on white-collar crime in Australia, because it seems like if you're going to do crime in Australia, do white-collar crime, because it seems like a lot of people get away with a lot of things, and that's been sort of well canvassed at Senate estimates. So I'm interested, when it comes to resourcing, what do you need to ensure that ASIC is actually clamping down on it?
Well, Senator, I know that there is lots of discussion at this committee from time to time about particular matters or issues that senators raise with us that for, a number of reasons we have not investigated. But they're not due, that's not due often to a lack of resourcing where there is significant misconduct. And indeed, as I was talking about with Senator Barbara Pocock a minute ago, and if you look at the statement that we've put in, there are numerous people behind bars tonight who have been incarcerated over the last few months as a result of the significant work of ASIC and its investigators. We've got, Mr Marco was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment over in Perth following conviction on 43 counts of fraud. Mr Agrawal sentenced to nearly 5 years in jail for ripping off members of Sydney's Indian community, more than $20 million. I mean, I can go through a list.
I understand you're getting some, but...
Yeah, well, it's more than some with respect, Senator, and I'm not trying to argue the point. I guess I'm trying, though, to, put the position that ASIC is an extremely active law enforcement agency, including in relation to criminal law, that we are seeing the courts impose significant custodial significant custodial sentences. We absolutely need to keep getting better. I don't want for 1 minute to pretend that things are perfect, and we need to work on the matters that come in. We need to communicate increasingly with those impacted, and we're really focused in on those things and being responsive, Senator, and both in these kind of forums, but also with the public more broadly about what we do, why we do it, and perhaps as importantly, those things that we can't do, and try to explain that in a way that is intelligible and makes sense.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I guess thank you. Can I, a few more? Is that all right? And then I'll get out of here. Thank you.
If you can be as quick as you can.
Okay. I guess myself and I know a former senator has raised the issue of Mr Anthony Pesic here in the ACT, and it seems to me there's a case to answer there, but ASIC don't want to continue with that. I've spoken before about Brindabella Christian College, and I'd like to ask you about this one. This is a local example, tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money has gone missing, and despite multiple warnings and due to the poor behaviour from the former chair and directors, but there's no indication that they'll actually be prosecuted. You know, the creditors have now been repaid in full, and so it seems like a case of, case closed. I'm wondering if you think that's acceptable.
Well, Senator, I know that, again, that you spoke to Mr Longo on the last occasion about both of those matters, Mr Petrick's matter and the Brindabella College matter. I know that ASIC's response has not, that you're not satisfied with ASIC's response. I think all I can do is repeat our position, and I'm happy to do that in relation to both, time permitting, or again, I'm happy to speak to you out of session about these issues further. But we
maybe just with time, but just on Brindabella, can you confirm whether or not that investigation is continuing or whether that's finished?
That investigation is finished as far as we are concerned.
So no more?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Canavan.
Brief as possible, but congratulations, Ms Court, on your appointment. I'm just wondering, I presume it's still acting chair?
I'm very much acting.
So when do you become chair?
It would be very career limiting of me to pretend to be chair before the end of Mr Longo's term. I start in the job formally on the 1st of June, Senator.
Okay, so still a while. Well,
yes.
I know you're still acting chair, but given this is your first, I think your first estimate since your appointment.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Could you outline to us how are you going to make ASIC better than it's been?
I'm not sure quite now is quite the right time to start talking about the future, Senator, just in the sense, as I say, I've got several months to go in the role as deputy. Perhaps what I could say, though, is ASIC has undergone a very significant transformation in the last 5 years. I think that's evident across all of the ways that we do our business. We talk a lot about ASIC's enforcement record, and as I said to Senator Pocock, we are conscious that there are senators that are concerned about that record, but we have fundamentally changed our approach. We have record penalties, we have increased the number of civil prosecutions, we have increased the number of custodial sentences, we have recovered, hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties for the Commonwealth, and we are out there all the time, as Mr Longo likes to say, in court somewhere in the country every day. We are one of the most active, if not the most active, enforcement agencies in the country, and I am very excited and pleased to be able to continue that work. As I said to Senator Pocock, I don't want to give an impression that we think the job is done. There will always be work for us to do, but you have a very committed commission at ASIC and a very professional team who is very dedicated to achieving good outcomes for Australians. We're going to keep doing that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I know you have a very tough job, but it's probably a tie between yourselves and CASA, with which government agency gets complained about the most to my office. So I know it's very tough, but and as you say, you've got a few months to think about it, but I'm sure there is much room for improvement. Just a couple of detailed questions in the limited time I've got. I'm sure you're probably aware of the Wagyu Shiraz. Am I pronouncing that right? Not a big wine. Shiraz.
It was the
Shiraz case.
Senator,
You're
but it
well
does
familiar
have
with that federal court case. I believe that hinged on the use of something called a household expenditure measure. I'm just wondering, there has been some reports to us that ASIC, despite the findings of that case, you continue to apply an internal household expenditure benchmark when reviewing loan books that's different from the publicly available HEM that is used by industry?
Unless Commissioner O'Rourke or Mr Savundra can help, I'm not aware, Senator, of the circumstances in which we would be looking at loan books. It may be in the course of an investigation into responsible lending that are
well, that's what that case hinged on, didn't it? That you took action.
Yes, it did indeed, and that was
found against you. The bank presumably it was.
Yeah, no, that's right,
was
Senator.
doing the right thing in the end. So yeah, well, I suppose it is in the context of those investigations. Are you, when you do that, when you are looking at loan books for these investigatory purposes, are you using a type of household expenditure benchmark which differs from that the industry uses?
Not to my knowledge, but Commissioner O'Rourke may be able to help.
So I think the question goes to whether, when we have a decision of a court, whether we then take action to make sure the regulatory guidance that we have to the industry about our expectations and our application of it is adjusted. And I can assure you that after the decision, that one included, we adjusted both our regulatory guide that goes to responsible lending, so Reg Guide 207 has been appropriately adjusted to address and reflect the decision of the court, and our staff members who are then administering that, they don't look at loan books. That's not part of the responsibility of our banking team. But I think to the point the acting chair made is that to the extent we're thinking about investigating responsible lending, it would be with the benefit of knowing what the judges have said about the law and administering it accordingly.
So that goes to the core of what I'm asking you. Your evidence is you are applying the law, or as was decided by, I presume, the federal court in the end, was it? Is that as high as it went?
It was the federal court. I'm not aware of any.
There's no investigators using, still applying a technique which is effectively, or still, I suppose, taking action against a lending technique that has been ruled lawful by the court.
I'm not aware of any such action.
Okay.
But if you have more details, Senator, we're happy to hear it and understand it.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you for that. I just quickly wanted to also raise, I'm sure you're aware of some reporting about small businesses losing lots of money from online chargeback claims. There's some reporting in the ABC in December. Do you have any, or are you taking any action or providing any protection to small businesses at the moment that are subject to these claims?
Can I just check the chargebacks from whom?
These are situations where, I've been caught up with myself, where you have a fraudulent transaction, usually on a credit card.
Right.
You flag that, or the bank sometimes flags that, and then the bank pursues the small business in question. Now, often they are fraudulent, and it's right and proper the bank does that, but they're apparently increasing amounts of false refunds as well. Refunds are being flagged as fraudulent when actually the customer did make the purchase, and they're abusing this chargeback system to effectively get a refund.
I think we might take that one on notice if we can. I think we administer the e-payments code, which
that's
is
what it goes to. It's effectively a form of e-shoplifting is being described.
Okay. I haven't heard that phrase.
Obviously, the system is in place for a good reason.
That's
because there are bad actors that are hacking people's credit cards and the like. But it seems like it's being piggybacked on by others to abuse the system, abuse the protection.
Thank you for drawing that to our attention.
All right, no worries. Thank you.
That concludes our questions for ASIC. So thank you very much. We will now go to a break, and we will be back at 9:45 to hear from the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. has been circulated. Would you like to speak to that, or are you happy to have that tabled?
No, Chair. Very happy to have it on the table and to take Senator's questions.
Thank you so much. We will go straight to Senator Canavan.
Thank you. And thanks for appearing this evening. I just wanted to start, I believe you have been sent a letter by the Nurses Professional Association of Queensland and the Australian Medical Professional Society in about late November. This letter is in regards to complaints that a group called Project 491 is engaged in misleading conduct around the use of puberty blockers and other gender-affirming care in Queensland, in particular soliciting donations to what seems to be an attempt to get around the current prohibition on the use of those techniques in Queensland. Are you aware of that correspondence?
I am not, Senator, though if you have been told the letter has been sent, then it will have been put into our under-assessment process, but I'm not aware of it.
It also was the subject of an article in The Australian on the 30th of January. I think that's the right date, certainly in January sometime. 29th of January, I apologise. This does go to, of course, the potential for harm to children. The letter that I have here from nurses and medical professionals lays out in quite a lot of detail their concerns here about the misleading claims, particularly in light of the CAS review and also an Australian federal court case from Justice Strom, who has expressed that, or said that Justice Strom in that case, an Australian case, said that, I quote, that current gender guidelines should be approached with caution, and that, and I quote, they do not have the approval or imprimatur of the Commonwealth or any state or territory government or Department of Health. I'm just wondering, given this does go to potentially misleading conduct that could harm children, why hasn't this been prioritised then? Doesn't seem to have been prioritised by the ACCC. Nearly over 2 months now since you received the letter.
We have a very careful prioritisation program, and we do definitely look at harm. Certainly in relation to our product safety area, a critical priority is the safety of children, young children and toddlers. We're happy to take on notice and see what has been the progress in relation to this letter.
Well, that'd be great, because this is a letter from a representative body of both nurses and medical professionals. They represent, my understanding, 16,000 medical professionals across Australia. So it should come with some weight, I think, what they're saying. They treat young people every day, and it would be great to see have it looked at.
You are right, Senator, that questions of misleading and deceptive conduct across the economy, apart from financial services, are the ACCC's jurisdiction. There may also be health and health regulatory questions there, which would sit with other regulators.
I think they've written to a range of organisations, but obviously they are making claims that there is misleading claims being made by this group, and I suppose you have to do your normal tests on whether the law applies here, but it does seem they're engaged in a certain amount of trade or commerce around providing a service, so maybe there is a case. But anyway, I've highlighted it. That's what I wanted to do. Wanted to ask then, I wanted to get an update on Section 46. How many actions since 2017 has the ACCC taken under Section 46? I've chosen 2017 because that was the year of the, I believe, the effects test from memory. It's a long time now.
That is correct.
Okay.
I am aware of 2. However, I will wait to see if Melinda McDonald's here, she's nodding. So one was the Tasmanian Ports matter. The second is the MasterCard matter that will be in court in about 2 months' time.
Were you successful in Tasmanian Ports?
Was settled through an undertaking granting access.
Okay. Do you collect data on how many investigations you've undertaken under Section 46 over that time period?
So there will have been a number. I have seen a number in the period since I've been chair, which is soon to be 4 years. Do not have before me now the number of those investigations. Melinda is on screen. If you wish to add anything, Melinda is the head of our competition division.
Thank you, Chair. Melinda McDonald, Executive General Manager of the Competition Division, and thank you, Senator, for the question. We do maintain that data. We'll have to take the question on notice in order to give you the number of in-depth investigations with respect to Section 46 over that time period, but it is data that we can obtain and provide.
Okay, thank you. I'd probably be interested too, if you can, on how many of those investigations have not proceeded, closed if you like, or maybe some are still ongoing if that's relevant. That would be great over the same time period. Thank you. Do you at all collect data on how many private actions are taken under Section 46? These are ones we'd have to actually go to court, of course, for you to record them, but do you monitor that?
We do monitor those. Of course, they're matters of interest to us as well, Senator, so we do monitor those.
Okay. I haven't followed it as much. I've been distracted on other battles since the effects test days, but sorry, there have been 2 high-profile ones. Have they gone to court?
Yes.
Okay.
One relating to energy supply in Queensland,
right,
and the other very significant action by Epic Games against Apple and Google, okay, that was successful,
right,
in the federal court with very significant findings of misuse of market power.
Okay, great. The other one, was it successful, or
I think
the
it.
energy one?
I think it was successful. Melinda, okay, can you confirm
well, maybe
that?
If you could come back to me with a number, you pointed 2 significant ones, but that would be great. In your view, has the jurisprudence here developed sufficiently on the effects test to have some impact on competitive behaviour in Australia?
Was a very important and significant amendment that was made to Section 46 to include impacts of actual or likely effect of substantial lessening of competition through a misuse of market power in addition to the purpose test. We would prefer to see more cases relying on it in relation to 46. Importantly, though, Section 45 and 47 also have an effects test. So we do have a range of jurisprudence and precedents that are in relation to the effects test. The MasterCard case, for example, is looking at purpose and areas that are relevant in relation to debit card processing services. The ACCC also had 2 very important public enforcement outcomes last year. The action we took against Google in relation to past agreements to have exclusive default and pre-installation contracts with each of the Australian telecommunications companies. Google admitted that past conduct was against our law with an anti-competitive effect. So we have had, and we also took action against Equifax relating to agreements in relation to payroll data, which excluded the offering of their services, credit reporting services, other competitors to have access to key data, and that was also relating to an agreement entered into with a likely lessening of competition effect. So we do have other jurisprudence relating to it, but we would prefer, and we do have areas of investigation which we are pursuing relating to these questions.
I suppose my question is a bit broader about the jurisprudence, because one of the reasons that I think you guys played a crucial role, were supportive of the effects test, was that there wasn't really much to that date jurisprudence around Section 46, and perhaps one of the reasons for that was because of the high hurdle you had to jump over, which from memory effectively meant you had to prove intent of some kind, the purpose test. So this was, I suppose, my question is not just about jurisprudence around what an affects test means, but also actually fleshing out what Section 46 means more broadly, going back to probably its original intent. So my understanding of what you've said, your evidence is that to date, the ACCC hasn't actually gone to court since 2017, but MasterCard will be, and it's definitely going to court, is it?
It is.
I suppose anything could be settled at the last minute, but at the moment it looks like it's going to court.
It does, and to the federal court, and I think at this stage it would be very unlikely if it doesn't.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll watch with interest, and I'm glad you're pursuing these matters.
Yes, and Ms McDonald has an additional point. Sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, Senator, I was just going to assist to just clarify. In relation to our investigation into the conduct by Equifax, they offered a court enforceable undertaking in order to resolve our concerns late last year. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I'm sort of waiting for Malcolm to get here. Didn't he have questions? But yes, Sharma will fill up too. I've just got one more on this. I'm just wondering then, I believe you mentioned Google. You have drafted some rules to force digital platforms to open their devices, I think. Is that correct? Right.
We have...
I don't need you to... I just wanted to... Yep, you definitely have. I'm just trying to be sure here.
Sorry, I just want to make sure. There are two areas we've recommended that there be new measures in respect of for designated service-specific codes that would relate to critical intermediary digital platform services. The second area that is relevant is in relation to scams protection and disruption under the legislation, the scams protection framework legislation. There is intended to be, once digital platforms are designated, code obligations upon them in relation to takedown of scam sites, actionable scam
My questions probably go more to the former one, because I was going to ask, is there a reason you couldn't use 46 to do that? Or to, scam's probably a bit different, but you get that question?
That is a hotly debated question around the world in relation to competition law and antitrust. Competition law can be used. The reason that we have recommended and continue to strongly recommend that there should be that capacity for designation by a minister that as to platforms that are critical intermediaries in the Australian economy is that the objective is not to wait, because investigations, going to court, getting a judgment and then multiple appeals could take 10 years. Okay. These markets are moving so rapidly. Any view about what's happening with cloud services and AI, it's fundamentally changing those markets and our economy, and it takes too long. Whereas the objective of such interventions in codes would not be to regulate prices, but would be to set up interoperability so that there could be contestability. And Australian smaller innovators and startups would be able to be interoperable and connect onto the platforms, would have to pay a reasonable payment for it, but would then be able to compete in ways they're currently precluded from doing so.
Okay, thanks for that. And I mean, just finally, a bit rhetorical, but back in the day when we were both advocating for the effects test, I remember Coles and Woolworths and Telstra and I think Qantas, and they're all saying the sky was going to fall in. And has that happened?
No.
No, it hasn't.
It has not.
Maybe we should always take their advice with a grain of salt. Thank you very much. Thanks for that evidence. Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yes. Sure.
So my understanding is there's been two actions that the ACCC has taken under Section 46, the Tasports case and the MasterCard case.
Yes.
My count, there's been 14 private actions used by Section 46. Is that right? Is that, Ms McDonald, does that sound roughly right, including the Fortnight case?
Senator, I'd have to take that question on notice as to the exact number, but there has been a number.
But more than the ACCC has undertaken, right?
More than the ACCC has taken in the period, you're correct, but as to the exact number, I'd have to take that on notice.
So why is that? Why are private parties doing more to enforce the competition laws in this country than the ACCC when you were given new powers from 2017 and an expanded remit under Section 46?
First, it is a great strength of our Act that there are private party actions. Private parties have significant skin in the game. Epic Games is $1 trillion company globally. They have much more resources than the Australian government could ever give to any regulator to enforce the law, and they have taken action in multiple jurisdictions, and it's very helpful that they do so because they have a very clear financial and commercial interest to take action. The ACCC does need to be targeted in relation to the areas that we prioritise and take action in. Those that we have chosen have related to logistics, transport and ports, and also to payment services. There is a third that I should refer to because it was resolved with a very important court enforceable undertaking 2 years ago, which was an action against Telstra in relation to spectrum hoarding that was in which Telstra accepted that it should release the spectrum early to enable Optus to early rollout of their 5G network. And it created the biggest expansion to the Optus network than had been achieved prior to that time, which was a significant competitive increase. So the ACCC does take action in respect to each of the relevant provisions under the Act, and we use different manners in our enforcement toolkit, including investigations and then entering into court enforceable undertakings. And those create more quickly than court proceedings would real changes to the competitive environment. So we're strategic, we achieve real change, and it is very important to have the benefit and the action by third parties as well.
Mm-hmm. It just, look, it seems to me, you don't need to answer this, but the advocacy is for a new digital competition regime or an ex-ante competition framework, but it seems the existing powers, when they have been used, like in the Epic Fortnite case, have been shown to be effective, and the ACCC does not have much of a track record of using the existing powers. So I find the business case, if you like, for expanded powers not well made.
That is the case that large digital platforms put, and they put it worldwide. The ACCC does not accept it. The court decision and remedies in relation to any action will require necessarily to be specific to the evidence that's before the court. It cannot be forward-looking in terms of changes in the market, and those are the sort of aspects that only can be achieved through specific regulatory intervention that would be enabled. Japan has decided to take this action in terms of legislative regulatory intervention. The UK has. Frequently Europe is criticised for it, but there are, because of the broad nature of their prohibitions, but it has produced a situation in which there are significant increased choices for app stores in the mobile operating environment. That is not present currently in any nation that has not taken legislative intervention. There is the ability currently, Senator, if you were to wish to make a payment, an in-app payment, on your phone, or a contactless payment on your phone, you would have to, if you have an iPhone, use the Apple Pay. You probably also have wallets from your bank on your phone, but you can't use that in a simple contactless tap and go transaction. Now in Europe you could, because there is a requirement in their legislative intervention. The ACCC considers that those sorts of choices in competition, which produce less fees paid by consumers for those payments that are happening every day, is an important intervention.
Okay. Look, I accept your explanation. I'm not persuaded, though. Now, it said in the AFR in January that the ACCC has already drafted rules for a digital competition regime, but the legislation is not passed yet. Is that true? Have rules been drafted?
No.
Can I read you did you see this story? It's Ronald Misen in the AFR on the 18th of January. I think it's an interview with you, Ms Gascott-led, because you're quoted. But the paragraph reads, the ACCC has drafted rules that would force Apple and Google to open their devices to competing stores in Australia, but is waiting on the government to pass enabling legislation.
It's not correct.
So no rules have been drafted?
No. Okay. We worked in close consultation with Treasury on the consultation papers, but those papers are about the framework and principles. They are not about detailed rules.
Yeah, I've seen the discussion papers or exposure drafts. Okay, so there's no rules that have been drafted by the ACCC anyway?
No.
Okay. That was all I had on that. But just before I pass to... Sorry, go back. I've just had one question, because you mentioned spectrum, and this intrigued me before. Was the ACCC involved in ACMA's decision about its approach to managing existing spectrum licences that are expiring? So you might be aware that ACMA made an announcement on the 17th of December saying that it was not... it was simply going to renew spectrum licences rather than take them to auction. Mm-hmm. On the face of it, it doesn't seem like a very competitive approach. I would have thought it's better if the market determined what the value of those spectrum licences is, but I wanted to know, was the ACCC consulted by ACMA or Treasury or anyone else on this approach?
We were consulted by ACMA, yes.
Okay. And what was the ACCC's view?
There was a consideration of weighing up as I understand it, the existing carriers will be required to pay amounts, but it's not going to auction. There was first a consideration, and as I believe, but I will check if Ms Ross considers this is correct. First, ACMA tested and considered were there any possible parties interested to bid to enter as carriers into Australia. Remembering we have had a number of situations of new entrants that have been acquired where fourth carriers have not been successful over quite a period of time. Mm. And the consideration was there was not interest to come in as a facilities-based, full investment new carrier, as distinct from carriage service providers who compete, having acquired the capacity from carriers. And in that circumstance, the ACCC gave advice and was consulted on the parameters.
So your advice was it was acceptable not to go to auction in those circumstances?
It was weighed up also in context of there is a rapid need both for expansion of services and expansion of the strength and reliability of networks. And in those considerations, it was thought important for the carriers to continue to do that expansion of services, including in broader areas of Australia.
But so does that mean that taxpayers are effectively subsidising them to do that because they didn't have to go to auction? I mean, if that was a consideration, aren't we saying that means they could pay less than market rate because of the other obligation they're fulfilling?
In large part, the critical consideration was done by ACMA. The ACCC looked at gave advice in relation to the competition considerations.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Happy to leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for appearing again.
It's a pleasure.
Good evening.
Good evening, Senator Roberts.
Hearing some of your comments in answer to Senator Sharma. Taking on Apple and mentioning Apple Pay. And some of your other comments. I just use cash because the governments have been trying to get rid of cash, but So we have to protect it. But anyway, very brave, so thank you for your refreshing comments. And I'm going to start with a compliment, actually. In October, we discussed the growing concentration in ownership of insurance companies. And you mentioned you were reviewing the takeover of the insurance arm of the Royal Automobile Club of Western Australia by the IAG Group. I note on the 11th of December, the ACCC announced the takeover had been opposed on the basis of reduction in competition. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say on that, because I hope this is the start of the end of market concentration in insurance.
It was based upon a careful analysis of the market conditions in Western Australia. It is possible that transaction will be brought back to us under the mandatory merger notification regime. The parties did foreshadow that when we announced the opposition under the informal regime, so it may be reassessed.
Okay. Well, tonight's line of questioning is about a potential revolving door of staff between the ACCC and private legal firms. Are there restrictions on someone who is on the ACCC payroll, especially the executive, leaving and immediately taking a position in the business they may have just been regulating at ACCC?
We require the entry into a separation deed that...
what does that mean?
So that they enter into an agreement with the ACCC, which is a binding enforceable agreement, to firstly preserve the confidentiality of the information that has been received, and also to continue to observe obligations that applied under the employment in relation to conflict of interest. We do not, we did in one case specify a period of required leave before employment could be taken up in a private law firm, but we look at that question, so beyond the general obligations in relation to conflict of interest and preservation of confidential information on a case-by-case basis.
So signing that deed, is that a requirement that the prospective employee must agree to before signing up?
Yes. So employees are obliged to do so, and commissioners enter into a code which during the term obliges us to comply with all statutory obligations and legal obligations, and also to enter into that separation agreement upon leaving.
And that relies on trust. It's be very difficult to enforce it because you don't know what's happening in the new employer's offices.
We have some observation because we see who comes before us, but yes, we do not know what is being said, no.
The Financial Review has reported on this topic, and I'm considering legislation to stop politicians and senior bureaucrats leaving and going to work for a company they were just regulating. This practice is too commonplace. ACCC Commissioner Lisa Carver, is that how you pronounce her name?
Yes.
Left in May of 2025, halfway through her term, and went to work for Herbert Smith Freehills. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Did you address this move at the time in respect of the perception? And I'm sure this was a false perception of that HSF bought off an effective commissioner with a large job offer?
I think that is an incorrect perception, and Ms Carver did sign a separation agreement.
Commissioner Carver was the Enforcement Committee Chair for the 2023-24 ACCC prosecution of bingo bins. Bingo bins were represented by Herbert Smith Freehills. Bingo lost and were fined $30 million. In the Sigma Healthcare Chemist Warehouse merger, Carver...
Sorry, just one moment. I should note that, to my knowledge, though it was resolved before I became chair, Ms McDonald will know, Ms Carver was conflicted and did not participate in the consideration of bingo matters when she came to the ACCC.
Okay, thank you. In the Sigma Healthcare Chemist Warehouse merger, Carver, as Deputy Chair of the Mergers Review Committee, participated in merger assessments in that period. The merger was approved in November 2024. Herbert Smith Freehills advised Chemist Warehouse. I'm not suggesting misconduct in any way. by any party, but I am saying the capacity for corruption exists in these arrangements. And I think you're acknowledging that.
We have a very clear and very strict conflict policy. Commissioners are required to disclose conflicts both when all work that has been done, if they have been in private practice, when they join the ACCC. That results, depending upon the extent of the seniority and if it's a one-off transaction, it's one end of the spectrum. If it's continued advising, it's at another, and at the continued advising level, that person will be conflicted and not have involvement in matters for that company for a number of years while at the ACCC. If it is, but a clear disclosure is given, that is then, the Chair receives advice on it from our General Counsel and our CEO, and I then take a recommendation to the Commission, and we decide and record in a register the treatment of that conflict. So we take that very seriously, and frequently for the initial period when commissioners join, if they have been in private practice, they will be absented from a number of matters, and they leave meetings. They don't participate at all in the deliberations. They don't receive papers, and they do not then participate in decision making.
Of course, I didn't think of that, but there's potential conflicts entering ACCC,
yes,
as well as departing from ACCC.
There are. There is an objective to bring in highly skilled and experienced people. We have many highly skilled and experienced people who have worked in the public service throughout their career, and they are significant, the majority of contributors in the ACCC, there is no doubt, but we also bring in and are keen to attract appropriate people with skill levels, and that requires careful management.
And I suppose it's small, but there may be some people who want to get into ACCC so that they can get out again later and use their contacts. It's always a possibility.
It's a possibility. Yeah. We do seek through our legal arrangements and the separation deed to manage this, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. Jennifer Barron was promoted to General Counsel, Merger Reform in early 2025. This is my last question. With a major task on the books, preparation for merger law changes. In late April 2025, King and Wood Mallisons announced her appointment as a partner in their national competition team in Sydney, a team which does merger cases. The law says this person can't use direct knowledge of an upcoming event at the new company, but they can use any other insider information to make themselves a valuable new employee. Has anything been done about that?
Ms Barron also entered into an agreement giving ongoing, undertaking ongoing obligations to preserve confidential information.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms Gottlieb.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our questions for representatives from the ACCC, so thank you very much for coming. We are now on our final set of witnesses for the day. So invite the Australian Office of Financial Management representatives to come into the room, please.
And we're actually basically on time.
Almost on time. How's that? Mm-hmm. thank you very much for coming. The committee welcomes representatives from the Australian Office of Financial Management, and hopefully you haven't been waiting for too long because we are almost back to being on time. We've got your opening statement here. Would you like to speak to that or have it taken on notice?
Just read that into the transcript, please.
Sure.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to make an opening statement. Over the past 12 months, the Australian Office of Financial Management has continued to strengthen its capability and processes to enable its ability to meet Australian public service standards and remain an agile, contemporary organisation capable of operating in an increasingly complex global financial market. We are focused on our core responsibilities, issuing debt securities on behalf of the Australian Government, managing cash and debt portfolios, and implementing initiatives in the Australian securitisation market. The agency's diverse, experienced and highly skilled workforce continues to deliver on our key purpose and meet the performance measures set out in our corporate plan. I'd like to provide the committee with an update on our current issuance for 25-26 financial year. As announced on 18 December 2025, as part of the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, the planned issuance for Treasury bonds has been revised from $150 billion to $125 billion, and Treasury index bonds remain between $2 to $3 billion. 2 new bond lines have been issued so far this financial year. In July 2025, we conducted a $16 billion syndication of a 4.25% Treasury bond maturing in October 2036. More recently, in January 26, we completed a $15 billion syndication of 4.75% Treasury bond maturing in October 2037. This transaction generated the second largest order book on record, reflecting exceptionally strong investor demand, even amid heightened global market volatility. As of 11 February 2026, the level of AGS on issue is $994.4 billion. Issuance for the 25-26 financial year totals $85.5 billion. This includes $84.5 billion in Treasury bonds, with $53.5 billion issued by tender, $31 billion issued through syndication, and $1.5 billion in Treasury index bonds issued by tender. At the AOFM's December 2025 Senate estimates hearing, the AOFM received several questions from senators regarding the fraud and corruption results from the 2025 employee census. I wish to reiterate that AOFM takes allegations of corruption, fraud or misconduct seriously and is committed to high standards of integrity, professionalism and accountability. The Australian Government's public interest disclosure process exists to raise concerns and enable appropriate investigation. No PID reports have been made regarding the AOFM in the past 12 months. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with this opening statement, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms Hughes. Senator Sharma?
Yeah, please.
Hi.
Ms Hughes, when we were last here in December, I asked you about the recent increase in the weighted average yield for the 10-year Treasury bond, and I noticed it had gone up 50 basis points. And at the time, I was just going through the Hansard, I think your explanation was that Australia's yield curve very much moves with what's going on in financial markets globally, and our yield curve is more correlated to the US. Now, I've since looked into this, and it seems that whilst our 10-year Treasury bonds, the weighted average yield for the US and Australian 10-year bonds was almost identical in June. They started to diverge by October. They diverged by about 50 basis points in December when we were last here, and they're now about 80 basis points apart. And this is after some years when they've basically tracked each other closely. So what do you think is driving that divergence? And why have yields gone up in Australia and they haven't in the US?
So thank you for your questions, Senator Sharma. The main driver of the increase has been changing market expectations for RBA policy rate movements. Following better than expected economic data and higher inflation data, the market went from pricing 2 rate cuts in October 2025 to pricing 2 rate hikes in December 2025. This was reflected in both wider spreads to the US bonds and in higher domestic 10-year bond yields.
So it's because the expectations of inflation are higher in Australia than they are
That is correct.
in the US?
Yes.
My sort of quick desktop research earlier today suggests that our 10-year Treasury bond yield is now higher than certainly any other G7 economy, or any G7 economy, but most advanced economies. Is that also your understanding?
Australian yields remain comparable, albeit generally higher, to those of our peers, especially the UK and the US. The front end of the curve remains higher than that of global peers, about 4%, which is mainly driven by the recent cash rate increase and expectations. However, going further along the curve, the spread actually narrows.
Okay. So what it reflects, though, doesn't it? I mean, because in other countries, central banks have been cutting rates, comparable G7 countries. Inflation has been coming down. Australia, I think Japan is the only other central bank that's been raising rates in the OECD or comparable OECD countries. Given that, I mean, investors are being asked to hold these assets for 10 years, at least on the primary market, doesn't it indicate that their inflation and hence interest rate expectations for Australia are higher over the next decade than they are for other countries? So they're demanding a higher premium to hold the asset?
Yes, so the yield curve is reflective of domestic market conditions.
Including inflationary
Including inflation, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Thank you. And I saw, and again, I just want to check my figures here. So the last 10-year Treasury bond issue that I could see was from the 4th of February, is that right? Issued by the AOFM?
It was January.
So the last 10-year bond we issued was, sorry, Matthew Whedon, head of funding, was today.
Today, okay. What was the, so is a 10-year bond issued today?
Roughly.
Yeah, so it's obviously wouldn't be up on your website yet.
Be up on the Data Hub.
Oh, okay. Well, what was the weighted average yield for that one?
Look, the current 10-year bond yield's around that sort of 4.75, 4.8 mark.
Okay, so the one I saw on 4th of February was 4.92.
Yep. It's come back a little bit since then.
Okay. There's still the premium over the US 10-year bond is still about 80 basis points?
No, it's more like about sort of around that 60 basis point range.
Okay. Yeah. And then I just wanted to turn, we spoke as well before about cash on hand.
Yes.
So how much cash on hand is the AOFM keeping at the moment?
What's today's figure? We have 49.6 on hand at the moment.
Okay. I think when we spoke, you said you generally try and your liquidity buffer is around $30 billion.
That is correct.
Yeah. So I've been looking back over the past several months, it's been consistently higher than 30 billion. It's often been 50, 60, 68.
Yes.
What's the reason for that?
So, so the way that the AOFM manages its liquidity is that at the beginning of each 6-month period, so post every financial update that we receive from the government, we put a statement out to the market essentially indicating what we're going to issue over the time, and that we basically stick to that pattern of behaviour because we want to be predictable and have the market knowing what we're doing each week. And so we're not actually adjusting the tenders and the amount of debt that we're raising in response to cash flows. So sometimes the cash flows are stronger than forecast, but we do keep issuing that debt with the idea that we want to be that, we want to be consistently in the market and not actually constantly changing our strategy depending on cash flows.
Okay, but holding a cash buffer of that size comes with a cost, right?
It does.
Like effectively, basically the 4.9% or What do you calculate that cost of holding that cash at?
So the cost of debt versus the return on cash for the last financial year. So the cost of our debt was 4.2 on average.
So I missed that with the door.
Oh, sorry. So the cost of debt versus return on cash for the end of last financial year was 4.2% average cost of debt versus 4.21 average return on cash. So it was on par for the last financial year.
Okay. So you're saying it doesn't cost you any more, or the taxpayer any more, to hold $60 billion rather than $30 billion in cash?
It didn't it did it in 2025, no.
Okay. Would you expect it to in 2026?
It might, yeah, it might do that. We'll need to sort of keep an eye on it.
Okay. So is the target for your liquidity buffer still 30 billion, or has that changed now?
No, it's still 30 billion. And we increased that partly reflecting our increasing issuance task, as well as some of the volatility that we're actually seeing in global markets.
So just so I understand this correctly, is it a target, is it a baseline, or is it a target? Like, if it's a target, I'd expect you to fluctuate around it. If it's a baseline, I'd expect you to always be above it.
It's a baseline, essentially, but that we still do have the flexibility to use a liquidity buffer, but we aim to stay above it as the majority of the time.
Okay. And now, how's the AOFM incorporating cost into its issuance strategy? Because obviously we're dealing in a higher, there's more liquidity risk and in a higher interest environment.
Yes.
So how do you manage that in terms of your long-term and short-term bond issuance strategy?
So at the beginning of each financial year, we set a debt strategy as well as a liquidity strategy. That process that we have had in place for quite a number of years now actually involves speaking to a number of stakeholders, including our Treasury colleagues. We have robust internal processes. We're constantly testing things internally and externally. And then we make a recommendation to the Treasury Secretary, and it is the Treasury Secretary receives advice from the Advisory Board and then approves our debt and liquidity strategy. So that's the process that we're going through. We also sort of test a lot of scenarios, and the Advisory Board will throw scenarios to us and ask us to sort of think about different things that might actually happen and what our response to that might be. So that is sort of the process we go through. And, one of our key purposes is actually to, fund the government with an eye to cost and risk. And so that sort of factors into the thinking that we're doing for our annual strategy, but as well as for the way that we actually decide on what our weekly tenders will be.
Is that strategy a public document?
No, it's not. It's sensitive market information.
Okay. So has that been... What time of year do you develop and have that strategy approved?
Generally around the time of the budget, in time for the fiscal year. So it's a fiscal year strategy.
Okay, so you're preparing that
We're
now?
starting to prepare that now, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And then I did want to talk about personnel and staffing.
Sure.
So when we last spoke, I raised with you the concerns I'd had in your staff survey of, I think it was 18% of staff saying they'd witnessed corrupt conduct in the workplace in the last 12 months, and it's significantly higher as we discussed. And I appreciate you took some questions on notice, and you've been able to provide some further detail, which I appreciate, and some you have not been able to provide. But you did say when we spoke last time that you were engaging in staff consultation to see if you could understand some of the reasons behind that, and to be honest with you, a more general level of staff unhappiness, large number of people planning to leave the workplace. What have you uncovered?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate that we haven't had any public interest disclosures. So after the Senate estimates in December, we did ask staff to report any incidents that they wish to have investigated. And I'll talk about all of the overview things that we've done, and I'll ask our COO to actually respond in further detail. What we've also done is we've refined our fraud and corruption policy. We've created a reporting template, and we also now have a cheat sheet, so people know exactly which matters to take to which organisations and how they should actually raise those issues. We also have the Deputy Commissioner of the NAC coming to speak with the team next week so that we can understand further around what corruption is.
Okay. How did you communicate to staff their whistleblowing
I think Ms Hendrickson was...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
So, Ms Hendrickson, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the AOFM. So, as Ms Hughes noted, we've taken quite a bit of action since our last hearing in December. We did hold an agency discussion asking employees to raise any concerns to myself or our Chief Risk Officer. And as Anna mentioned, we also approached the NAC, and we've worked with the NAC to prepare a presentation, tailored to the agency that the Deputy Commissioner will present next week. What we have also done, we do have an assurance testing program where there is independent testing done on a number of our controls. We've updated that assurance testing program because we looked at our control set against the Commonwealth Fraud Prevention Centre's control library to ensure we had a robust and complete set of controls. And then subsequent to that, we've updated our assurance testing to make sure we have timely identification of any potential fraud incidents. Myself and the Chief Risk Officer received a small number of concerns raised from staff, and the Chief Risk Officer and myself have worked through those concerns following the investigation procedure that's outlined in our fraud and corruption control plan. To date, we have not found through that investigation any instances of actual fraud and corruption. Rather, we've found incidents where people might have not had the full set of information, they might have heard information secondhand, but we've also found some good opportunities for some process improvements as well. So we've got that process that we've embedded into our fraud and corruption control plan, and we're continuing to ask staff to raise any issues so we can look into those and investigate those thoroughly.
So can you just give me a flavour then, or a sense of what these concerns were that staff?
Yeah, great. So I've got a few that came through. So we had one concern raised from an individual that was concerned or disagreed with who the CEO picked for the CEO award winners last year. So this is a certificate that is provided to usually around 4 employees for performance through the year. It is chosen from nominations that are made from everyone in the office during the course of the year, but the CEO does pick the award winners from those nominations. So someone raised a concern around how that was chosen and why those people were chosen. Mm-hmm. The process around CEO award winners is published in our reward policy. So when we looked at the complaint, we looked at whether or not the policy was clear on the process, which it is, and also the opportunity for all staff to submit nominations for these awards throughout the course of the year. Another example that I can raise, we had someone raise a concern around a split payment where they thought potentially a payment had been split without the appropriate financial delegation being applied. What we did find was at the time, which was a number of years ago, the appropriate financial delegation was given for that split payment. But actually at the time, there was 2 processes that picked up that payment and looked at the payment at the time. So we had 2 processes, including our assurance unit, that picked up that payment and did a review and found there was no concern with how the payment was processed and approved. So that complaint was re-raised to us, and we reanalysed the information, went back, sourced all the documentation, and again was able to get comfortable with the processes that were undertaken at the time. And then maybe just a third one. There was a concern raised about some HR recruitment and that there was a concern that an employee was made redundant and then subsequently a new employee was put into the same role. When we actually looked back at the timeline and we looked at the documentation, we could see that actually that person that came in was actually working at the agency prior to the other person leaving as part of a redundancy process. They were in a separate EL1 role in the team. They weren't replacing the individual. They worked alongside the individual for a number of times. So again, potentially some misunderstanding about the dates of that was what we found with that investigation.
Okay, thank you. When's the next staff survey being conducted?
It will happen in May this year.
In May of this year, okay, thank you. And just turning now to the independent review that was announced yesterday, were you, Ms Hughes, or other parts of the organisation consulted about that review before it was announced?
Yeah, so in the conversations that I've had with the Treasury Secretary since last year, particularly post the adoption of the new structure, we agreed that an independent review, so the plan was to always do a review post the structure to make sure that it was enabling us to be as efficient as possible and delivering our main goal of increasing our capability and capacity as an organisation. We decided to do that review and have it an independent review commissioned by Treasury so that it could stand on its own rather than it could stand on its own and we can sort of respond to any improvements that they actually suggest that we make.
Okay. Were you consulted on the terms of reference?
The terms, it's a Treasury review. It's an independent review. So no, we were not consulted on the terms of reference.
Okay. What's your understanding now that the terms of reference are public? What's your understanding of what the review will help the AOFM achieve?
My understanding of the terms of review is to look at whether or not the agency can continue to deliver its key purposes. And that we have the capacity and capability to do that.
Okay. Do you have confidence that the AOFM has the capacity
I do.
to do that?
I would just reiterate that the process that we went through in regards to developing this structure was really well thought out. We looked at the work level standards. We had a change framework that we followed. We undertook a considerable amount of internal consultation across all different levels, and everybody in the organisation was involved in the structure. And we also ensured that we had an independent organisation actually conduct that consultation, so that everybody had a voice, and we were able to, create the best structure that was going to support the AOFM going forward.
Just one of the questions you answered, I noticed I got the answer today, I think, was about the number of staff departures in the past 12 months. So your organisational headcount at the moment is 41. And in response to that question, I noticed you said that 19 staff have left in the past 12 months. So 6 resigned, 4 on an APS transfer, 1 voluntary redundancy, 5 redundancies. And that's like a big loss of expertise in a short period of time. You've turned over half your workforce within 12 months. Is that a concern? Because you're obviously operating in a challenging environment. You've got responsibility for $993 billion of government debt, and it's growing. And in a high inflation expectation environment, I can see the wisdom of a restructure, but this is a pretty severe one.
So to answer your question directly, yes, I am confident, and since we announced the structure, we've continued to deliver. So our weekly tenders are still achieving strong coverage ratios. We had a syndication in January this year, where we actually had the second biggest book on on record. So the agency is continuing to deliver, and we do actually have robust internal processes that are really well documented so that we can see changes in staff without there actually being any gaps in capability. I'd also flag that we've had a number of additional people come into the organisation that have brought actually a diverse range of experience, which is actually adding to the capability of the organisation. I'd also note that with the new structures, so a lot of the turnover that we have had has been in those APS level staff, and what we're actually hoping to achieve with this new structure, particularly in the changes that we've made to our front office, is that we're actually creating roles that are deep and meaningful for APS employees, and instead of them sort of turning over around 18 months, 2 years, we are actually getting to keep them for sort of 2 to 3 years. I'd also flag that, you know, people have left for a variety of reasons. There were retirements in there. There was also a voluntary redundancy, and there are people who've actually been promoted out of the AOFM, and we've been a great source of talent for the private sector as well over a really long period of time.
Yeah, okay. Just finally, then I'm going to hand to Mr Canavan, my Senator colleague. Was it your intent, though, to turn over half the agency, or was that bigger than you'd expected? I mean, was that part of the plan?
It's actually, this financial year, our turnover is actually below average. So it's only around, if you take out the redundancies that were part of the new structure, it's only around 16%, which is... last year it was 20%, the year before 12%, the year before 24%, and in 2022 it was actually 36%. So turnover, particularly at that APS level, has been consistently high for 5 or 6 years now.
Okay, I'm not sure I quite get those calculations, but in the interest of time, I'll pass to Senator Canavan.
There might be still time after me, thank you. How much did the redundancies cost?
Let me just double check the number. Oh, sorry. Oh, here we go. So the future AOFM redundancies were $598,464.
And how many people was that?
That was 5 people.
Right, okay, thanks for that. Do you have a figure for the attrition rate, separation rate, however you describe it, for last calendar year?
For the last calendar year, that was... so that's the 16%. If you take out...
Was that for the calendar year, not the not financial, was it? That's the financial year. Oh, so that I'm asking. So is the 16%, is that for year to date?
No, so that's for 24-25.
Oh, okay, right.
So we haven't got a... sorry, no, that's for 25-26 as of
to date. So 16% over 7 months is quite high, and that doesn't include the redundancies.
No, so in terms of reporting on HR data for turnover rate, it removes redundancies that are initiated by agency. That's a common practice in the reporting. So this year we're sitting at 16%, and 24-25 was 20%.
Yeah.
And then, as Anna mentioned, 12% in 2023-24, 24% in 22-23, and 36% in 2021-22.
Right. So. I'm just wondering, I mean, if you already had a high level of attrition, 16% in 7 months is a lot, why would you then make 5 experienced people redundant on top of what you already were losing? What was the rationale for that?
So the rationale for that was really actually responding to that, and so what we were finding is that the organisation was losing a lot of people because there was opportunities elsewhere, and we needed to create a structure that would actually allow more opportunities within the organisation. And so that was certainly what we were hoping to do, and we flagged that with the we flagged that with the staff sort of when the new SES positions were announced.
So it's basically to allow younger people to be promoted. Was that the rationale?
That's part of it, but there was also it was also around strategic alignment and making sure that we had the right people in the right roles. So we actually had we had some senior people who weren't operating in line with the APS work level standards. So you had, EL1s actually doing the work of, 4s and 5s and sometimes 6s. So it was basically resetting the organisation so that everybody was actually operating in line with the APS work level standards.
Did you consult with the Public Service Union about the redundancies?
Yes, we did.
Right.
Yes, we did. So we sent them a letter letting them know that we were starting the consultation process.
Did you let the Minister's office know before?
No, so I report through to Treasury, and so I let Treasury know that
before the redundancies, you let the Treasury.
No, before we announced the consultation process for the new structure.
Okay, and that included a plan for redundancies. That new structure.
Well, at that particular point in time, we didn't actually have a structure.
Okay, so my question is, did you inform the Treasury Secretary or anyone higher up in Treasury, whoever you report to, about the redundancies before making the decision, or telling us?
Yes. So after the consultation process, when we presented the draft structure to the organisation, we also advised Treasury of the structure.
Can you also take on notice? But did anyone in Treasury let the Minister's office know then?
I will have to take that. That's a question for Treasury. Yeah.
If you could take that on notice. I mean, if everything's going smoothly as you've described, and trying to say the separation rates are not high, why has there been a need to have this external review?
I think it's about providing assurance to Treasury, to ourselves, to our investors and to the debt markets that the AOFM is operating as effectively and efficiently as it possibly can. So I think it's around building confidence in the changes that we've actually made.
Right. I mean, because the issue here is that it's not ideal to have such a review announced. An organisation managing $1 trillion in debt. There's a very extensive front page story in our premier financial press this morning about the issue. Obviously, it'll be read by everybody in the markets. I mean, what are you going to do to restore confidence that the organisation is being run properly? Because anyone reading that story would probably take away there are some issues here.
Yes, I think that's exactly why the independent review is so important, and I'm going to continue to focus on delivering against our key purposes and continue to ensure that the organisation can continue to perform as well as it has been.
There are reports in this article from staff that it was hard to speak to you, that you wouldn't welcome people into your office to raise issues or complaints. Is that true?
No, I feel that I've always operated professionally and with integrity, and certainly people wander into my office on a regular basis. I have drop-in sessions where I sit in the main meeting room in our building, and anybody can come and talk to me at any particular time. I often have lunch in the staff room, so I am available to staff for them to come and have a chat to. I also walk the floor every morning as well.
Had you ever accused a colleague of mansplaining to you?
Mansplaining?
Yes, that's a claim in this article.
Oh. I don't recall doing that, no.
Okay. Did you, before your appointment, did you know the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, on a personal level?
No, I didn't.
You'd never met him before?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. I might just turn to your debt issuance. We heard earlier from Treasury, I put to them your website says $993 billion. I think the note today is 994 billion. Does that include the billion you've issued today?
Yes.
Looking at your issuance schedule, I think you've got another 5 billion to issue this week. Am I reading that right?
That is correct.
That's correct. 5
billion? That is correct, yes.
So that would take the debt to 999.4 billion. And then is there anything rolling off?
I'll just let the Head of Funding and Strategy answer that question for you, Senator.
Yeah, we do have some maturities rolling off this week.
Okay, so with that it would be 999 well actually I think it's 5.15 you've got. It's a bit over that, but how much is rolling off this week?
I don't have that figure at the top of my mind, but we've got a $9 billion maturity of Treasury notes coming up.
So you're not quite, you'd be a bit like Don Bradman, just below 100. And I think you were the former captain of the cricket team, were you?
That's correct, mate.
So. All right. Okay, so we're getting very close. Do you have guidance of how much you're issuing beyond this week? So how much are you issuing next week, for example?
We haven't made the decision as to exactly how much we are going to issue next week. How much our run rate is normally at the moment is, sorry, Matt, sorry, Senator, the Head of Funding will answer that question for you.
We're typically issuing about $2 billion of Treasury bonds per week.
Right, okay.
Roughly 150 million of index bonds twice a month. And our issuance of Treasury notes, it kind of depends on our cash requirements, but we've been between $3 and $5 billion per week.
Hang on, sorry. So how much per week? I thought you said two at the...
No, so it's $2 billion of term debt.
Oh, okay, right.
Yep.
Okay.
So Treasury bonds are our primary funding instrument.
Yep. And then 3 to 5 of notes then, is it? Or?
Correct.
Okay, right, okay. So somewhere between 5 and 7 billion.
In gross terms, yes.
In gross terms, okay, per week, okay. Yes, I know that, and I was just going to... I've got more questions, but I can put them on notice. Is there anyone else? Okay.
Do you want to take us to 11 and then
I will.
Whatever's left you can put on
notice.
notice.
In this job to work to a clock, so I will do my best to get to 11 on the dot. I just want to ask about the index bonds. I looked earlier today and it would seem that Treasury indexed bonds, or at least one I looked at that's maturing in November 27, is trading at around 3%. To me, that seems to indicate the market is expecting inflation. Sorry, did I say? I said index bonds, did I at the start?
Yes, you did.
Inflation seems to be, inflation expectations seems to be sitting at about 3%. Is that correct?
You can infer inflation expectations by looking at the differential between the yields on nominal bonds and the real yield on index bonds. That is a market-based measure of inflation expectations. We can look at what's called the break-even inflation, and you can make inferences from that.
Yep.
I don't have that figure at the top of mind.
Okay.
It's going to be approximately, somewhere around 2.5%, I think. Inflation. There is more to inflation expectations than break-evens aren't strictly it's an indicator rather than a precise measure. I think probably possibly the best description.
Sure. Okay. They do seem to have gone up in the last few months. The
real yields have definitely gone up.
Yep.
Break-evens have gone up a little bit, but have been relatively stable by comparison.
Right. Just looking at I was also looking earlier at might have lost it, but at your maturities coming up over the next year or two, does seem to be quite a lot of debt coming off at sub 1% yields. Is that something you're looking at, and how that's going to affect the average interest rate for Commonwealth debt?
Yes, it is. It's something that is factored into the budget, into the federal budget.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are you expecting there to be enough liquidity in the market to roll over those longer term debts?
Yes, we do. We feel really confident that the demand will be there to refinance that issuance.
All right. Okay. Well, it's been very, very close to 11 o'clock. I might leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. So that concludes our hearing for today. So thank you to all the witnesses who appeared and to Hansard and Broadcasting for their assistance. I remind senators that the committee has agreed that any written questions on notice should be lodged with the Secretariat by Friday, February 20th, and the committee stands adjourned.
Good job, Chair.